There's no spring in her step, though.
Well, she just came from RDIC.
That's it.
Kind of like devastating. I didn't say that.
At 6 p.m. You'll note on the posted agendas that there is a Water Sewer Commission meeting also scheduled to open at 6 p.m. We will reserve that opening for about 10 minutes. Could I have everybody pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I get a motion to sign Treasury Warrant 20 and payroll.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you. And we have one set of meeting minutes. Two sets of meeting minutes.
Motion, go ahead, sir.
Go ahead.
Motion to approve the minutes of March 11th, 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve the minutes of March 18th, 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I just want to note that this meeting is being filmed. It will be televised on channel 191 as well as YouTube. We're going to go right into our 6 p.m. Hereby open a public hearing for a common victualler's license for the Viapino Companies Incorporated DBA Baked Bakery. Welcome. If you want, you can stay there.
Yeah.
But if you want to come here, you can come here. But yeah, the mic can hear you, the camera can see you're good. If you could introduce yourself.
Well, my name's Elena. I actually just took over the Viapino Companies. It was a family business. So I was in Holden up until we just celebrated our 3rd year for Baked. And then I found the space in Rutland, and it was kind of going back and forth, wanting a bigger space, and we just took the leap and did it. So
I said the name wrong.
it's okay.
Viapino?
Viapino.
Viapiano.
Totally okay.
Viapiano.
I'm kind of used to it. I have a weird name, so.
I do too, and it's nice when people give it a shot.
Exactly.
Is everything in order?
Yeah.
Yes, for the common vic?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Inspections were all completed.
Does anyone have any questions for Lady Baked?
I saw you're opening tomorrow, hopefully.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. We have basically everything ready to go. It'll be fun. That's all I can say.
You just sort of figured we'd be signing them. You made me realize you did a lot of hashtags, and then you put @Town of Rutland, which went to nowhere. So I fixed that.
Oh, good.
And you'll take it over.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So thank you
Yeah.
already.
So your Holden shop is shut down?
So basically, the Holden shop is where we do all of our baking. That is
Oh, okay.
basically our kitchen. Rutland is our retail location. So Holden still, it's not like a retail. We're still connected to the restaurant. We still do a lot for the restaurant, so we're still there technically, but not. If that makes any sense.
Could people pick up orders in Holden, or do they need to pick them up here?
They need to pick them up in Rutland.
Okay.
I mean, if someone really needed to get picked up in Holden, I'd probably be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
But there's no refrigeration that I can just leave a cake or an order in. So yeah,
And everything's ready. And you had all your inspections done, it looks like.
yeah.
everything.
We're used to that with the restaurant and bakery.
Right.
So I had a checklist. I know what I need to do. It was not easy, but I knew what needed to be done. So.
Is there anything the town could do for you?
Give her business.
Buy
pastries.
lots of stuff.
Not really. I'm actually just excited to be in a town that does a lot, like the 4th of July and stuff like that. So I'll be feeding off of what you guys do.
Well, we encourage you to keep that in mind. We
Yeah.
already, with the 4th of July is kind of a big thing. Feel free to participate, even though you're North Brookfieldites now.
Yeah,
The key
but
is there.
We always come to town.
yeah, we
Yeah.
always, because I'm from Holden, so,
Yep.
and then
Grew up in Rutland,
yeah,
so.
so we're
Yeah.
used to doing the 4th of
Yep.
July around here.
So do you think you'll be open on the 3rd and 4th? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
this will be the first year that we're actually open for the 4th of July, because that was always a big family thing, so I've always never, even the restaurant, we always shut down that week, but this year I'm like, I kind of want to be here, so.
Drinks, coffee.
Yep, we have all different types of coffee. We have smoothies, milkshakes, acai bowls. We have some healthy options as well as the bad options. So we also are including vegan and gluten-free because I know that's a big thing for people. But I'm going to try to do as much as we can and go from there.
Awesome.
Any seating? Any seating inside?
Yeah, there's about, I think, like 20-ish seats.
Really?
We had some seats, and then we also have like a little area where there's a couple couches and a coffee table, so you can like sit and watch TV, read the newspaper.
Will you have Wi-Fi in there
Yes.
for customers?
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So,
Well, keep us in the loop if you need
Yeah.
anything from us. But we're excited to have.
the one thing I did hear about, I don't know, I think I saw on Facebook, you guys do an Easter egg hunt?
Rutland Recreation typically does.
Okay.
I think they were a little behind because they were absolutely inundated with summer fun registrations. But yeah, it's usually the week before,
Okay.
and it is held out on Glenwood Road. At
Okay.
the Glenwood, at the community center.
We always do, like, that's one thing that I do, is like holiday cookie parties. So like Easter, Halloween, Christmas. Most likely Christmas we'll do in Holden because it ends up bringing in like 40 to 50 kids. And I don't have room for that. So, and then like my father dresses up as Santa. So Santa comes, surprises them. But if I could go off of the Easter egg hunt and then they could come in and decorate cookies. Because I saw that.
Yeah.
So,
You could possibly reach out to the recreation director and see if
okay.
you wanted to do something even remotely. So you'd set up a table
Yeah.
at the center. There's a lot of people there that day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll look into it.
And usually just planning. In December, the like Christmas holidays, there's like a gingerbread house contest down here in the
Okay.
basement, and festival of trees for Christmas tree decorating and everything like that. So there's a lot that happens in town also that maybe you can coordinate
Yeah.
also with those groups as well.
Definitely.
So I think generally Facebook pages and the town
Yeah.
website. But
Yeah, I
we'll-
try and look everything up as much as I can.
yeah. And you'll be right across the, I'm sure you'll get lots of town business, so.
It's good. I want to meet everyone,
Yeah.
so, since
Awesome.
I'm not from town, so,
Well, welcome.
thank you.
Congratulations.
Can I
Thank
get
you.
a motion to sign our common vic license?
I'll make a motion that we sign the common vic license for, the
Via
Piano
Piano.
Companies Inc. doing business as Baked Bakery across the street at 249 Main Street.
Excellent.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, so what time's opening tomorrow? 10:30?
6:30.
What?
6:30 a.m.
6:30 a.m. I didn't read that right.
Yeah, 6:30 to Tuesday through Friday, and then Saturday 6:30 to 4.
This is just an aside. If you get a lot of the kids for half days, don't hesitate to reach out to the principals as like a heads up, like, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna see if I could like talk to whoever's like a teacher in Rutland, because I'm like, I need to know when the half days are.
Yeah, it's on the
'Cause-
school calendars. But yeah, if there's ever any concerns or anything, don't hesitate to reach out to.
Yeah, I think you might be safe. I don't know that there's any more half days
Okay.
this year.
I just know in Holden it used to be a
Yeah,
little
no,
nuts.
it is. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
And I was never
absolutely.
open, but yeah, it was just a little nuts.
Yep.
So
Yep. Same thing.
Yeah.
You have a reprieve. Wait till September. Or October. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, we're excited.
Thank you guys. Have a good day.
Thank you. Good one.
Thanks for coming in.
I'm realizing I didn't close the hearing prior to us voting, so the hearing is clearly closed. All right. The Board of Selectmen meeting is, could I get a motion to put it into official recess?
I'll make a motion at the Board of Selectmen meeting break to convene a meeting of the Worcester, or the Water Sewer Commission,
No, Worcester.
not Worcester.
Excellent. So hereby open the meeting of the Water Sewer Commission, Monday, March 25th. It is 6:11 p.m. And we are going to jump right into a presentation by our DPW Director, Joe Buckley. Thank you for being here. And guests.
Really not so much of a presentation as an update. Just some revisionist history. Again, when I took over at DPW, I met with our consulting engineer, Weston and Sampson, and we reviewed all the projects Weston and Sampson was currently working on. A couple weeks after that, I received a bill from DCR for transportation of wastewater from Rutland into Worcester and where it's treated. And what became evident was that charge exceeded what we were taking in at the time. And I decided no longer to work on any of the other projects with Weston and Sampson, but focus on the water and sewer rate study, which was commissioned by previous administrator Nardowitz. And then Superintendent Gary Kelleher. I presented the board with some of the increasing flows that have been going through Rutland, the increasing charges we've been seeing, and we developed several options. And last time we spoke, I believe we presented the board with 6 options, and we had presented you with a draft report. Once we made a decision at that meeting, based on those 6 options on the best one to proceed, I had Weston and Sampson engineers and their consultant, the Abrams Group, put together a final report and a proposal on how we should proceed. What comes out of that document is basically a 5-year rate plan, which includes capital planning, rate increases, and helps us to recover the estimated sizable deficit in the sewer operating fund. To do that, they have recommended that we combine the water and sewer enterprises. Also in that document, there's, again, capital planning. It's at the back of the document. I sent all of the members of the board that report on Friday. In lieu of trying to do too much of a presentation, we were more focused on getting through the process. So just to review quickly, at least at this point, I'd like to keep the discussion focused on rates. I don't want to talk about the moratorium or the growth study or other issues with DCR. I think we need to get our own house in order. So we really need to focus on the rate, and we're going to need some decisions. To that end, I brought our consulting engineer, Weston and Sampson, and their representative, Pat Cotton, and they had hired a sub for the Abrams Group, which is a CPA, who did huge amounts of work to get this done, including contacting the Department of Revenue to find out what we can and cannot do to protect the town's interest, to make sure we can pay our bills. With that, I would like to open it to the floor to questions through the board. And again, not just me, we also have those folks.
Pat, why don't you and, sorry, who's the gentleman from Worcester? Matt, come on up.
Okay.
Hot seats. Welcome. This is a lot, obviously, for us to digest. The Water Sewer Commission does not meet often, and typically for big ticket issues. Clearly, this is a big ticket issue. I think the first question that Joe sort of ended with was the question that has been on everybody's mind since this first came up, which is there were a lot of questions about combining water sewer enterprise. So can you talk us through that? Because there were definitely opinions that it wasn't legal, doable, possible. But according to, I think, all 6 options, it's number 1 on the list of things to do.
Sure.
You can stay there.
There's a
Yeah,
microphone above your head.
We're gonna
so
keep
it-
Joe there.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
So, is the question whether it's legal or not, or how to go about it?
I think the question is, Joe referenced the fact that you spoke with DOR. I think we want to hear the process by which it was 100% confirmed that this is even possible.
Okay. I work with my father, Mark Abrahams, and he was actually the one who spoke with DOR. So I wasn't part of that conversation, but I can tell you that he did speak with I don't know his exact title, Tony Rashis at DOR, and they had discussions about the process by which this could be done. And they together came up with those 6 options that we have now presented in our final report. And those options were validated with DOR. So basically meaning there was a conversation that took place, there was a basic understanding about what the options were, they were documented and then provided to DOR for review and validated that those were accurate. So we have gotten DOR's approval that the town can do this. So therefore, we recommended it to the town as a possibility.
Town councils also confirmed that should that be done, it'd have to be done at a vote at town meeting, since the town meeting created those 2 accounts.
And we agree with that, and it is in our report that town meeting would have to vote whatever option the town decided to move forward with.
For review for everyone who might be watching, the reason we got to that point was pretty clear. We basically couldn't continue to fund the sewer utility, and we're going to use retained water earnings to shore up the deficits. Otherwise, you could be looking at rate increases in excess of 150% for the last 2 quarters of FY19 to be able to pay your bills. I just want to make sure that's clear.
How many water-only users are affected by what we are doing here with the water and free cash in the enterprise?
Maybe 100.
100 out of how many total?
1,600 water, 1,500 sewer. That's detailed in the report. I can tell you
Yeah.
what page if you'd like.
Yeah, I have it on page 5 for 1,600 water. And 1,500 sewer.
My only point is we didn't get to this point lightly.
Yeah. Could you, and under the assumption that at least the commission read the report, we understand the basics of this, could you give us a high level of the differences among the 6? Knowing in advance that number 1 is the preferred.
Sure. Just so I can reference them, I'm going to turn to that page. So, the 2 things to consider at a high level for the differences in the options are the timing, which is really a difference of 1 day. Just qualifies whether it would take place technically in FY19 versus FY20. So one of the dates is June 30th, 2019, and one of the dates is July 1st, 2019. Okay, and you'll see that for each of the 6 options, for 3 of them, the June 9th is presented as the date, the effective date, and for the other 3, July 1st is presented. And then also, the manner in which the fund is created is the difference, another difference between the options. So, option 1 and option 2 are the creation of a new fund and basically the rolling of the existing funds into that new fund. That's what option 1 and option 2 are. The differences between the 2 are, again, the effective date. Okay. Option 3 and 4 don't have the creation of a new fund per se, but rather the merging of one fund into the other. So I think for 3, we're merging water into sewer to create essentially a combined fund. And for 4, we're merging sewer into water with an effective date July 1st for both of those. For options 5 and 6, again, the same type of merging, water into sewer, but the effective date is June 30th. And for 6, sewer into water, the effective date is June 30th. Now, to take it one step further and provide a little bit more detail about differences between these options, think about the certification for retained earnings, just like how free cash is certified by the town, and the timing of that. So if the fund were to be established with an effective date of June 30, that means that retained earnings would be certified as the combined fund, water and sewer together, as of June 30th, meaning that that money is available to be spent in a combined fund. Whereas with the other options with July 1st as the effective date, the certification will take place as two separate funds, water, sewer, and then the first time the certification would take place of the combined fund wouldn't be until the next fiscal year. So that's really why that effective date is, let's say, key in this process, is because of when the first certification would take place for the combined. Okay? Now, the funds would still technically be available even if they were certified separately. It's just that they, the transfer couldn't take place until the next fiscal year, meaning once the new fund's established, that's when the retained earnings could be transferred and merged together and used. But if it were to happen in FY19, June 30th, then they're certified as one fund, and that transfer would not need to take place.
Is it okay if Becky, what would be the value? I don't see a financial value in using any of the July 1 options,
Right.
based on what we're hearing.
Right, from my understanding, the June 30th is when because we're running a deficit in FY19, I
Right.
think is where we want to combine it, effective June 30th, so everything is combined so that we don't have an issue in FY19 and we can kind of go forward into FY20.
So from your office's perspective, you're also on board with
And
June
that's
30th?
discussing it with the town accountant also.
Great.
The June 30th date is the one that we should use.
Okay,
So option one does have an effective date of June 30th.
okay. So and please, anybody who wants to jump in, if we assume that removes option 2 from the equation, can I ask you about the options you offered where you're merging, either the low balance into the high or the high balance into the low? What was the purpose of even offering those as opposed to the creation of a new and transfer of all monies?
Just because it's technically a possibility.
I mean, it feels like 6 of one, half dozen of another, but DOR must have had some opinion about this.
I don't know of one if they do.
Okay.
DOR didn't come to us with these options, we went to them.
Right, and they didn't have any comments on any of the, they
No.
seem like semantic differences, right? Create one, that's combination of the other two old ones. Do we have historical issues with the fact that if we allowed one of the existing accounts to continue to exist and merge the other, are there issues with historical data? I'm trying to come up with problems or.
You're trying to
In
foresee
my
potential?
opinion, I think mentally it makes more sense to create a whole new fund that is the water and sewer enterprise.
Right,
I would agree.
Put them both into it and dissolve the other two.
okay.
It just accounting wise seems cleaner.
Does.
And I'm not the town accountant, just so everybody knows. But it just kind of makes more logical sense.
Okay.
How much of an increase are we talking about after the funds are conjoined?
Well, that's the real subtle difference between there's only two options here, okay? There's one where we borrow money to make capital improvements we've already committed to, and one where we don't. We're suggesting we borrow money to make capital improvements, and if you go to page 10, you can see the difference between the current charges and the FY20 charges. Now, just so we're clear, those current charges assume that we have combined the two funds. There would be a lot more if we hadn't, correct? All right. So it will be the difference, and this is based on what we call a design usage, for like an average usage, and those are just under that 2,075 cubic feet for each of the higher bills, so like summer and spring when you use more water, and 1,865 cubic feet for when you don't use as much water in the fall and when it's cold. So that you're looking at the difference between the current and the FY '20. The bottom line, do you follow?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And we're not on water sewer. This is billed quarterly, correct?
This is quarterly. These are the total, these are
Right,
annual.
These are totals, but
Right.
I'm just, it's a quarterly bill, so
Quarterly
this
bills.
divided by
4, right.
The bottom line, that's annual.
That's the annual,
I
correct.
hope.
Yep,
Yes, it is.
not yet anyways.
Is it fair to say, I'm just doing quick math, we're looking at about a $33 average increase for water and a $200 increase for sewer
For a year,
for a year?
right.
$19 a month.
And that's assessing a flat 10% increase on the base for every year for the next 5 years.
Now, those numbers are approximate, and you're going to have to review the rates almost annually.
Okay, so that was for water, you were assuming a 10% moving forward because water has been relatively stable.
Right.
With sewer, we're seeing that big jump for next year to account for our shortfalls in the past 2, and then a slowing down of the increase. So
could
from
you do a better
50 to
job?
20 to
It's
10
really-
to 5 to 5? No,
No.
So one caveat on the sewer side, we.
on the
this
what?
in- on the
One,
sewer- on the-
more detail on the sewer.
Sewer side, sorry.
What'd you think?
I heard, keep talking.
Okay, there is currently, a quarterly assessment of $33.25 per unit for I&I on each bill. And the analysis that we've done has assumed about a 50% reduction in that. So yes, we have the sewer rates going up a large amount in FY '20, but it also includes a 50%-ish reduction in the
II charge.
in the II charge as well. So just wanted to make sure that the board was aware of that.
Is that contingent on you finding the source of the INI?
No,
What if,
it's 2 things, basically. There's, it's being cut in half because we're going to retain some II money in case we have a problem similar to the one we had this year. And then II repair work and study will be done by capital funds that are explained in the back of the document that we suggested we borrow for.
Joe, just as a question, and I know we've talked about this before, if someone's only on water if someone's only on water, is there a way to remove sewer charges from that person's
Absolutely.
bill? Okay, just to make sure that's clear.
Yeah. You can't charge someone.
Exactly, just making sure that people
No,
are
it's
aware that
okay.
they
It's
won't
it's a
be
valid
charged for
question.
sewer if they're just on water.
Can we step back just for a minute? And
Absolutely.
For people that are watching, could you just give a brief synopsis of how and why we've gotten to this point? Why the funds are the way they are?
Sure. I think over the last couple of years, there have been shortfalls in sewer funding because we basically didn't have enough money coming in to cover what we were being charged. The rates that were charged for transportation and treatment have slowly creeped up over time, and that basically caught up with the town over the last couple of years. What really made that look a lot worse than it is we had an extremely wet fall, and there's a lot of II, and that we get charged for what goes through the meter at the town line. So by means of example, for every 1 gallon we were charging people in Rutland for, we were being charged for 3.5 gallons. So the rates were too low to begin with over the last 2 years, and you had a very wet fall, which made the deficit much, brought to a higher level. I hope I've answered your question.
I just wanted for the people that are watching, one of the other questions that comes up all the time with I&I is, what is DCR doing about their share of the I&I that's coming through the trunk line, as opposed to what comes through the town's lines?
In all frankness, I've been chiding DCR quite a bit on their I&I program, but I would caution you on 2 levels. The way the current agreement or the intermunicipal sewer agreement is written, if DCR were to do a lot of II work, they can pass that cost directly on to the town. So we would have been feeling that cost regardless. Having said that, we've asked them to be accountable for doing II work like any other sewer utility in the state is. And I believe DEP is looking into that on our behalf. I hope that answers your question.
So no matter what we do, if they repair their I&I, we pay for it.
Right,
If we could charge 3.5 gallons for every gallon that we actually use, we still pay for it.
correct.
So,
But we're looking more towards the future. The next agreement is up for negotiation, so these are all items that can be put on the table when it comes time to say, how much are we willing to pay for going forward? What kind of capital improvements can we require them to make on our behalf? Those are important questions that have to be asked of DCR when we go through the next agreement. And this is really setting the stage. So you're right on the money with asking that question, but it's a long-term goal. It's not something that's going to fix keeping our own house in order.
I already have some of the answers to these questions. I'm just
No,
telling
you're
you,
doing it for the
they're
benefit of the
watching.
public, I understand.
They're gonna wanna know
Absolutely.
where this I&I is coming from and what are we doing about it? And what is DCR doing about it? And up until this point, it sounds like they're really doing nothing.
I've reviewed, again, I haven't been here a super amount of time, but I did go through some of the reports provided by DCR, and they're doing the basics needed to make sure that the lines keep running, make sure there's no backups, make sure there isn't wastewater bubbling up out of a manhole and going to one of the ponds here in town. They're doing that work. Are they actively chasing down sources of groundwater getting into their pipes? It doesn't appear to be that doesn't appear to be the case. Having said that, we've asked them for reports of that nature, and they have yet to reply.
Okay, thank you.
Joe and I have been in contact too with Senator Goby and Rep. Ferguson's office. They got back to us last week saying that they are in conversations with DCR as well on our behalf.
And DEP.
And DEP, because DEP is the agency that oversees DCR, making sure that they report their II work that's being done and all the trunk lines that they have. So that conversation is started. Again, that's more helping us in the future, especially when we're negotiating the new contract next year, or the intermunicipal agreement, I guess. So that should help us in the future. Not so much in our current situation where the meter's already been read, and that's what we're getting billed on based off the contract that we currently have with them. But at least a conversation is being started to make sure that this doesn't repeat in the future.
I guess the ultimate question would be, which is gonna be cheaper, to keep paying for all the extra gallonage that we don't put in there, or to pay them to repair their lines? That's the ultimate question, I guess. We don't have an answer for it, but.
If I may on that, I think that's where I really like Joe's plan that he has set out, and that, yes, DCR needs to do II work on their own lines, but so do we, and a lot of our stuff is out of date. So I really like how he has a very specific plan that says this is what needs to get done by this date, and then by 2024, we'll have updated our water sewer system to really make sure that we don't deal with this again in a couple years. So I really did appreciate that, and I thought that was very well thought out and thorough.
So.
It's not just me. I work
Yeah.
with them a lot.
Yeah.
Pat and his team have been great.
So I don't want to rush anyone, but I do want to circle back to our first 6 options, which were regarding our enterprise funds. So we've heard from Becky, we've heard sort of secondhand from the accountant. Dan has been through this as well, right, Mike?
Yes.
We have a time frame on our hands where this is something that needs to be crafted in time to be put on the warrant. It's relatively complex, and it will have to be reviewed by council. So if people have any other questions about the initial 6 options, which again is all about combining the funds in order to have access to the free cash in water in order to pay the sewer deficit.
So, if I understand correctly, we would really be looking, it sounds like the recommendation was to look at having the fund created or merged for fiscal year 19, so by June 30th. So that would mean that we're really effectively looking at option 1, which would be creating the new account. Option 5, which would merge the water into the sewer, effective June 30th, or option 6, which would merge the sewer into the water by June 30th. So those are really the 3 options that we're looking at. And it sounds like from kind of our professionals here, their tendency is to go towards creating a new account, which would be option one. But I think that that's where our discussion probably most lies. Is that a good recap?
It is.
From
It certainly feels cleaner. I think it's going to be easier to explain when we get to town meeting floor. This will be one of our more complex warrant articles to have to go through. And it'll actually be have you ever done this at a town meeting, either of you? Option one?
I have not, but it's possible my dad has. He has
Okay.
a lot of history in municipal government.
I'm wondering if the structure is actually similar to the way you phrased it on our page, which is creation of the fund with pieces that go under it, i.e. adopting the MGL. It's possible that we have to adopt the MGL first, but these are questions that, we'll have to talk about once the warrant gets put together.
The town council's been given a heads up too, so they are preparing something.
Who's gonna write the, the article?
Joe.
That's,
And I'll try and keep it as straightforward as possible.
I know you came into this looking for discussion. I think this one was pretty straightforward, and if we can take a motion on this, if you're comfortable with going with option one, it'll allow us to move forward with at least that part of it, and then we'll continue on with the discussion about rates. Is that okay?
I'm good.
is there any public? Do you want to ask
Yeah.
public
Yes.
discussion for?
Anyone?
what, questions?
Regarding just the first part, which is the combining of the water and sewer fund into a new water and sewer enterprise fund.
So a couple of questions. You said there was about 1,500 users of water sewer? And how many were water only, and how many are sewer only?
You wrote 1,500 water and 1,600 sewer.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Yep.
No, excuse me, the other way around.
No.
It's the other way around.
100 or
Yeah.
something that's around
1,600 water, 1,500 sewer.
That's household.
there.
Yep. Yep.
So it says 1,600 water and
It-
1,500 sewer.
I brought it. Just give me a second, please. It's in the report. 5?
On page 5, 1,600 water accounts at the top, and on the bottom, under sewer fund analysis, 1,500 sewer accounts.
But you have to have the whole statement. So it's 1,600 water accounts servicing about 2,100 dwelling units and 1,500 sewer accounts servicing about 1,900 dwelling units. Does that answer your question?
Yes and no. But if there's 1,600 water users serving
2,100
2,100,
dwelling units.
that doesn't make sense, because when you have multiple residences in a building, you charge each one for a service on the water bills, sewer bills.
So I'm having trouble with the question. So
If you have a water service going to a building that
Yep.
has multiple residential units, that one service,
may have multiple meters, correct?
correct, so it has multiple charges in that building, so
There are multiple accounts.
I guess what I don't understand is how there's 1,600 water users and they're servicing 2,100, it would seem to me the other way around.
There, you could absolutely have one,
If I may?
yeah, sure.
It's 1,600 accounts in, that are billed, and there are, I believe, 2,100 units in the buildings for those accounts.
So an account might get more than one bill, is what you're saying.
I'm not sure if, is
It's
it
the
one
other way
bill-
around.
one bill per account or one bill per unit?
No, there's one bill for every account. So if a building has 2 residences in it, there's 2 water bills going to that house. 2 water
It should,
bills
yes,
altogether.
it should.
Well, it should, yeah, it should be more than, because if it's not, then somebody's not paying a water bill at some place. Or a sewer bill.
I think.
It doesn't work that
yeah,
way.
like when I'm looking at bills of the condos, over on Maple Ave,
They
have,
split them up.
it's, I think there's about 10 accounts or something like that, if I remember right again.
What,
And-
in
and-
countries out of states?
Yeah.
There's 24 units per building.
But there are 10 accounts that are generated, so it's like one per building, but they're all merged in together. Again,
Yeah, some of the condos don't necessarily have meters for every single, or some of the housing units don't have meters for every single apartment or every
The-
single unit.
the owners of each unit don't pay their own water bill.
They
It's
pay
paid
the
by
association.
by the association. So the bill,
But there
the,
still should be a water bill for each residential. I
There's a
own a
water
building,
bill.
I got 2 units, we get 2 water bills.
But-
And we
But
pay,
it's-
we pay a water bill, we pay a sewer bill for one apartment, we pay a water bill, a sewer bill for the other apartment. We pay I for each apartment, we pay the
Right.
water tank. So those charges go to every single residential unit that has water.
not all the accounts or multiple buildings are set up that way.
But then why
So I
aren't
mean,
they?
Because sometimes you bill the association
Okay.
on a master
Well,
meter.
I don't understand why you don't, because I know of other buildings, you go in, there's one building, one person pays, but there's multiple charges on the bills for the number of units.
We can look at I can show you the billing structure for, like the condos and that type of stuff. I don't know that Joe knows them exactly.
No, I'm not saying you do,
But-
I'm just asking a question, that's
Right.
all.
I
Actually,
think this is something we could look at
yeah.
afterward, you know.
And actually, Tom, what you just said, I think, is exactly what's happening. You're saying there's an account, it's showing multiple units. That speaks to what was put on the documentation we have in front of us. 1,600 accounts servicing 2,100 units. So some of the accounts are showing multiple units in them. That's what you actually said as well.
But my point is, if there's 2,100 units being serviced, there should be 2,100 bills going out that charge for water, sewer, and everything
No,
else.
because only for the structure that you have. So when there's multiple units and they are not each paying water, sewer, because maybe they are not the owners, the owner of the account is paying the bill. Regardless of how many units, the owner of the account is paying the bill, and they're not getting separated. I think that's accounting for our difference. I mean, we're talking about 200, and when we think about how many multi-family units we have, and I think you have commercial in here as well, that probably accounts for that. Actually, it's more than 200, my math, 500 account versus unit difference. But yeah, we'll all,
I beg my difference, but that's not correct.
okay.
Okay, so that answers that question. Then my next question is, you talk about combining the 2 departments, from what I've heard in the discussion right now, is, the only reason to combine the departments is to make that free cash that's in both accounts put together.
Correct.
So how does that go, with an enterprise account, how does that go? You're supposed to be charging, the enterprise account is supposed to be supporting the services that it's providing. So if there are some only sewer users and there's some only water users, then they're gonna be paying for services they're not getting, if you combine both.
Oh, he said they would separate them.
There's a way to subtract.
No,
No,
but
I
his
think
concern is that the retained earnings for people who say only paid water being used to help rebuild the sewer, did I get that right? That's his concern, and there's no way we can address that.
But we know who our water-only users are,
Right.
but there's no way to address it.
What he's saying is, so out of, let's say, 1,600, for point of discussion, 1,600 water user accounts, 100 of those people only have water. They don't have water and sewer.
Right.
And they've been contributing to retained earnings, a small percentage, over the last 5 years. And I guess the concern he's raising is it may be unfair to those 100 people who only pay water charges, those funds are being used to help recover the sewer utility.
This year.
Did I,
Not
this year?
moving forward, yeah.
Did I get that? Is that what you're?
Right, but even moving forward, if you have something going on with the sewer department, those charges are charged against that.
No, they'll have to be charged against a separate utility, correct?
Right, and the water, same with water. We've had this argument for years at town meetings about whether the DPW trucks are getting charged against water or sewer or vice versa and all. I mean, it's not a new discussion, that's been going on for ages, so that's why I'm questioning, they said it'd be okay to combine them, but is that really what the law allows? And like you said, you gotta have that looked at, but, that,
I think
that's
we,
the question. The other, okay, so, because the other point was, and I'm the one that's asked the questions for the last couple of years, the water department had that free cash, and we've been told for at least 2 or 3 years now, that money was put aside to do repair work and upgrade work and have whatever things needed to be done in the water department. So that's all gonna go away just to pay the sewer bill. And then now we're back at square one at zero for doing any upgrades or any additional capital work or capital upgrade.
that's why we put borrowing into the rate to be able to go forward with the capital improvements in town.
Well, yeah, as long as people don't start moving out because the rate's so high. I mean, the rates aren't cheap now.
No, I understand that.
My other question as you were talking there, so are Holden, West Boylston experiencing the same thing with their flows into the trunk line?
Their rates are similar, yes. They did both,
So you've seen this kind of because our meters are at the town line, well, we pay, our rates are based on what goes out of town, correct?
correct,
At the town line.
at the town
So
line.
what goes beyond that is not added to our flow.
No,
So whatever I&I is beyond that, we don't know what that is or isn't, but
correct.
in the sewer, the trunk lines you're talking about are the trunk lines that, I wanna say MDC, but it's not MDC.
DCR.
DCR,
MDC used to be.
right. It goes from that metering station back to there's a couple of points in town where it comes back to. They maintain those still.
Yes.
Okay. And then last question I had that pertains to this still is, we talked a lot about I&I that goes along with these rates. The town has spent a lot of money over the last, I don't know how many years, doing I&I studies, I&I repair work. How is that measured to say, okay, we studied this, we see the problem, all right, give us another $1 million to fix these, or I remember a few when all close to $1 million. Did we fix them? I'm not saying you have the answer, I'm just saying, did we fix them? Did we eliminate that inflow so that we know we're not getting it anymore? So that we keep these rates down, or was that money just spent, it's gone?
I don't believe the money was spent and it's gone. I believe the town has spent I&I money over the
Oh, I
last,
know we have, well, absolutely
but actually
we have.
on sewer work.
No, I know, but is there a way to measure the results so that we can say, when somebody says, where did my money that I paid you go to? Yes, we eliminated 100,000 gallons, 50,000 gallons, whatever. Do we have a way to measure that so that we know that we've done something?
We can come up with estimates. I believe we can.
So,
And we have lots of reports to back that up and information to back that up. But I work has to be done all the time.
Oh, I'm sure.
It never really goes away.
so Tom, you remember back in '08, we did, I think a 5-year, right, program where we were borrowing. We went to town meeting, Weston and Sampson came out, gave a very large presentation where we approved a huge chunk of money that was going towards our water sewer infrastructure, particularly for I&I, something that we felt like we had missed a few years behind that. One of the reasons we were doing that and we were so aggressive about doing it was because we were over our limits when it came to the contract that we're under right now, right? And we were getting held back, we were being sued, you name it, things were going on. We saw measurable decreases in I&I because of the 5-year plan that we did. But to Joe's point, and Pat, I think you probably are the best person to second this. This is ongoing, constant. It's not fix it and we're over. It's every single year. And we can give this to you, this is open now, but the sewer system 5-year capital plan over 5 years is another $1 million. And that's never gonna go away. That's pretty much an integrated cost. It's not just treatment and transportation, taking it down and dealing with it. It's dealing with the pipes here. And as they age, even the new stuff's going to be 20 years old at some point. This is an ongoing cost. Pat can talk about this far better than me. No?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as part of the annual II program that the town is involved with right now, you investigate sub-areas based off of flow metering studies where you have a general idea of where the highest II sources are coming in. You investigate those areas through television inspection, flow isolation, manhole inspections, gather all the data, pull it into a report, perform a TNT cost analysis to only address the most cost-effective repairs that fit into the town's budget, and attack as much as you can with the funds that you have. And that is in accordance with the DEP guidelines and the plan that has been approved by DEP.
Could you speak to the fact that DEP recently made a big push to get cities and towns to do more I&I work?
Yes.
And they introduced more legislation in regards to that.
Yes, so 314 CMR 12, DEP in 2017 requested all communities in Massachusetts submit an II control plan to be submitted by December 31st of 2017 to make sure it was in accordance with the new DEP II guidelines and have a plan that fits their budget and their program to be submitted for review. The town of Rutland submitted a plan that was approved, and they're in
Compliance for now.
Yeah, they're in compliance with the DEP guidelines. Every community is required to do this. We wish that we could eliminate all the I&I in one day, but you'd have to, I mean, if you wanted to dig up and replace every pipe in town and align every pipe in town, it's just not cost effective to do so. Unfortunately.
Does this?
Well, hold on. Do you have any additional questions?
Well, I'm gonna say that if the rates keep going the way they're going, how's people gonna afford water and sewer? I mean, it's getting high. It's getting high. No, I agree with you, but I'm just saying, the town has spent a lot of money on I&I for the last 20, 30 years. They spent a lot of money.
Does this capital improvement plan allow the new rate structures to catch up to proper levels to maintain the capital improvements after the 5-year plan, or
We have to
is the
look.
5-year plan gonna be renewed for another 5 years?
We have to look at it after 5 years and see where we're at. You have to assess the
That's
system.
the intent.
That's the intent.
Okay.
So to circle back, Tom brought up some good devil's advocate questions that we're going to get that you've heard before because you heard
Sure.
them from me. There's no question that the majority of us in town sat and heard that we were saving our water retained earnings in order to take care of some projects, and we were essentially kind of going old school about it, saving our money until we had enough. And now here we are. We sort of had enough. We were ready to get started, but we have a deficit somewhere else. So to his point about 9 years worth of a water-only user coming into town meeting and saying, "This, you got to be kidding me." Is there honestly nothing, is this something to be looked at? Is there nothing to be done for that water-only user whose retained earnings for the past, say 9 years, I'm throwing that number out, have been saved in order to repair water? And now we're going towards sewer. Doesn't mean we won't still do the repairs through another vehicle, through borrowing, but you see, I can see where he's headed.
Let me ask you a question. If we were to keep the rates where they are right now, and we have to recover the deficit, how would that be funded? Or what would be the intent of the board to fund that? How would you pay those bills owed to DCR and to the Upper Blackstone?
Well,
How would you pay that? How would that be recovered? I guess that's my question.
So
Would that be-
you know the answer to that, and Tom knows the answer to that because we saw it at fall town meeting for the past 2 years, or spring, which is we operated at a deficit. Our last bill came in, we didn't have enough to pay it, and we waited until free cash got certified.
So
Right.
free cash for all residents in town covered those deficits.
Yep,
And there's people who may not have water or sewer at all,
A
absolutely.
lot.
and who had to cover to pay those. So that's my only point is some of that
Okay.
deficit's been spread around.
Okay, so see, there's an answer, but that the question is a fair question.
But that wasn't a real big, I mean, it was an amount, but it wasn't a huge amount.
In water retained earnings?
Well, no, in that whole thing, yes,
Oh.
I'm saying that last bill to finish up that portion of the last bill,
What free cash was used for?
yeah. I don't remember the number, but I don't think it was really big, was it? whatever it was.
It was big enough.
It was sizable.
No,
Yeah,
I
80.
don't disagree with you there,
It
but
was significant.
80.
Because I think we took money from other line items.
We
as
did,
well.
yeah.
There was a lot of transfers.
My only
It
point
wasn't
is,
just for
you have,
Okay,
your other option is to pass it on to the town entire.
true enough.
And I just want to call that out. And you've done that for the last 2 years.
2 years.
And it's probably around 70,000 over the last 2 years.
It was less the first year. It was close the first year.
Because the rates have been going up.
Yep.
And we haven't made any adjustments.
Yep.
Can, if I may
Sure.
ask, when was the last water sewer rate increase? And do you have any of that?
I brought it. Just go ahead and I'll look.
And I guess what that percentage was, and then how we maybe compare to other water sewer rates in surrounding towns.
The water sewer rate comparison to other cities and towns is a very good question. And we've been batting that around over the last couple of days. That's not easy only because a lot of cities and towns don't use the same rate structure. We're trying to get you some better numbers on that. As soon as we can get them out, we will.
Well, is anybody $1,300 a year? What's Holden?
Well, the Holden's we're still working on Holden. Because Holden bills monthly, and they have different, the rate structure's set up different. So if you were to look at it, it's not it's not a straight comparison. Neither is West Boylston. We'll get you some better numbers.
If we were to merge the two accounts into one to try to help with the deficit, how much is remaining? How much would be remaining that could maybe be absorbed through the free cash again that doesn't result in a rate increase for everybody? How much are we talking now if the two accounts were merged?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
What's the bill? What's the outstanding bill to the city of Worcester that we got whacked with?
$244,000,
Yeah.
correct?
Correct. And we haven't
This is
got,
all about the 244,000.
Yeah, that's one
Right.
quarter. Yeah.
So we merge them two, and then what's it down to?
So he's asking, when we look at the water retained earnings, bottom line balance, which was approaching $1 million.
no, there's 700,000 there.
No, because we spent some of it on a water project. They started that project. If we take the 240 and change that we owe, you're
Well-
still left with some enterprise water only retained earnings. And he's saying, is it valuable to take that money and plug it towards essentially almost like offsetting a tax rate,
Well, what, you know, I
offsetting the
mean,
rate of the water sewer?
what options are out there to avoid another $200 increase a year to the water sewer people? Just looking for options.
Well, I'm sorry to belabor the point, but we've been down this road already. And we talked about all this. And we don't have a lot of options. And we decided to go with this option the last time we met.
I think to answer Jeff's question, we've spent, and by the way, getting our rate history is going to help because obviously they didn't necessarily have it. We spent a lot of years sitting here and putting it off because we were dealing with such high taxes on the other side. Right? Our residents have been getting hit. We're at our levy capacity. They had debt exclusion on top of that. So when it came to the water sewer, when we felt like we had another year where we could get by, we did. We didn't raise the rates, and it has caught up to us. And I think that's what Joe's trying to tell us. It has caught up to us.
No, it's just, and I agree 100%. At the same time, though, we've gone through all the options once already, and my only concern is to keep the process moving.
Right.
And we're running out of time. I'm sure we could go back and go through the 6 options we sent the last time and see what other things were on the table to try and, but I don't see how we get around not raising rates. Because, for 2 basic reasons. One, we could take the retained earnings and plug the hole, you're right. But then at the same time, going into next year, we still can't pay our bills.
Not
That's
only
the-
that, we then wouldn't have any savings in the event of an emergency, and then we're
And it would
even
affect your
possibly
bond.
worse off.
Yeah.
Affect the bond rating.
So to,
Possibly by a large amount.
You're doing the same thing as using free cash to support your budget.
yeah, we
It's the
really
same
are.
thing.
Carol, did you have a?
Just a quick question. I'm a little lost. Is the town itself picking up some of all of this money that we shouldn't be? So those of us who are not on water sewer are helping to pay for the people who have high bills, but they also don't have to pay $30,000 for a new septic tank. I mean, I don't want to be paying your bill. How does that work?
That's why there's 2 enterprise accounts. That's why they're under water enterprise, sewer enterprise, so people that don't have that, they don't pay the bill.
Well, but now we're talking about all this excess money. Forget whether it's put
Well,
together or it's separate.
That happened
Yeah.
one time, that happened this last time.
No, twice.
But now
Carol.
it's going to be happening.
Well,
The last two.
maybe, but that's just talking, that's not saying that's gonna be approved, it's.
Carol, if I can answer that, I think what was said was the past 2 years at Fall Town meeting, after the town wasn't able to pay the initial sewer bill for the last quarter in June, general fund free cash money was used to pay that bill. Now that general fund is paid by the general tax base that comes in
That's what
every year.
concerns me.
So the past 2 years, that last bill was paid out of free cash that came in from the taxpayers rather than just the water sewer ratepayers. Moving forward, the goal is to not end up in that situation, and having the two enterprise accounts combined together, the retained earnings from water and sewer will be able to cover water sewer in its entirety, so we won't have to dip into the general
So
fund.
that's what you guys are
That's what we're
saying,
trying
you're
to do,
comfortable,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, because I don't want to keep paying other people's bills.
Well, you've done that for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Carol, we should look back. There was every attempt to mitigate that and find money elsewhere. So if there were overages in other line items, they took that first. So general fund was absolutely the last resort, but it was relatively desperate, and we were getting the letters from DCR saying, hey, you haven't paid your bill.
We actually just got one,
Did we?
yes.
Good times. I want to circle back one more time. So I think Tom's question, the answer wasn't good, but there was the answer, which is when we start talking about those 100 water-only users, the point is valid, but I think unavoidable is probably where we're headed.
Absolutely.
And it piggybacks on Carol's point, which is water users are getting affected. Not only that, all of our general taxpayers are getting affected at this point because of it. So to get back to the combining, is there a feeling of the Water Sewer Commission that we're comfortable going with the first option as described, in which case I would entertain a motion?
I mean,
And then we'll move on to rates.
yeah, I'm comfortable with that. It sounds like the consultants that we've hired, our DPW, our town treasurer collector, like, town council seems like it, passes muster, so,
Town council's still reviewing, just to make that clear,
Okay.
but they have been given a heads up.
okay.
But the experts on the matter are right in this room right here, these three people. And you guys are unanimous that option one is the way to go. Right?
Option one is combining, creating a new water sewer enterprise, combining the current water and sewer into that fund
This
with an
fiscal year.
effective of June 30th, 2019 for this fiscal year.
Yes. You agree?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'll make a motion that as water sewer commissioners, we move forward with option number one, which is to create a new water and sewer enterprise fund effective on June 30th, 2019 by transferring the water enterprise funds accounts and balances in the sewer enterprise funds accounts and balances to the new water and sewer enterprise fund and rescinding the water enterprise fund and the sewer enterprise fund.
Second.
Is there any other discussion? I agree. I just, this is not ideal, but I don't see any way out of it. It's not, yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
You know
Aye.
what, could we do a roll call on this one?
Sterling's aye.
Whitman, I.
Walker, aye.
No, I don't, aye.
That's okay. Did I? Did you want to give a reason for the dissent, for the record?
The record, there's gotta be another way to do this. There's gotta be. And I don't know where it is. I mean, I'm not on water sewer, so I really shouldn't care one bit at all. But I do feel for everybody that's on water and sewer. They're getting, they're getting trumps, something terrible.
Yep.
But there's nothing,
There's no other option before us, though, Scott. I mean, it'd be
I know there's
easier
no other
to
option.
side with you if there was another, hey, if you only did this. I mean, we're right against the wall. Otherwise, you're looking at a 150% increase. 150%. The average, I mean, this is
Skip, if it means anything.
all right.
We did this with the hope to keep the sting to residents as small as possible.
I have no problem. I can see the problem, but I think there should be another way to fix it. It's passed, and it's gonna go on town warrant, which is good. The rest of the town is gonna have a say.
I just wanna be, you had asked before, what other method would you use to pay the bill? I don't think anybody's suggesting another way to do it. We gotta pay the bill. My point is with these questions and stuff, it seems to me there's gotta be a way down the road to make this less burdensome on the town. There's gotta be something that we can do. I know we do an I&I, we gotta do better, we gotta do something, because if this just keeps going up and up, how is it gonna get, how is it gonna get, and where's it gonna be with bills? Just say, I can't even pay my water bill anymore.
That's what our tax bill should be.
Well, I understand
1,300.
the tax, but same thing with the tax
1,300.
bill. When there's, when we have budgets that just,
I know.
they don't regard what we have for income, they just come in with budgets that are 4, 5, 6, 8% higher every year, and there's a point of breaking.
So to speak to his point,
I
mean,
could try.
We've spent a long time fighting, or people arguing against the school budget increases, and they're fighting now at the state level to change the foundation. We have not spent that time addressing treatment and transportation costs through with DCR, with MWRA. We haven't.
Oh, that's the other thing I was gonna ask. Does DCR have that same, the DEP put a requirement on the town to come up with a plan? Does the plan affect the other people too with the?
We mentioned that earlier in this discussion. I contacted DEP personally and asked them that question, and through the town administrator, we also talked to the state senator who asked DEP that same question. DCR is being held to task for II work. They do have a little bit more time to get back to DEP because they're a state agency. That's all I've been really told, but they are being held to the same standard, yes. But that's recent, last couple months.
So I'm going to move on to rates, which started on page 8, just the bottom of it, and continued through page 11 with two major options, one of which is capital funded by borrowing. That's number 1. Number 2 is capital funded by outlay. Joe, do you want to do high level for the audience on this?
Sure. I could be, and I'll be as clear as I can. What you have in front of you are two basic rates. Both rates make the attempt at funding all of our transportation and treatment costs and continue to provide water service in town. The big difference between the two rates is how we pay for capital improvements like in the Inwood Road area where we've had a lot of breaks, how we continue to do II work. Do we pay for those out of pocket in the manner with which we've been doing it, where you keep trying to use retained earnings or increase your rate to have enough money in hand to do that work, or do you borrow it? We're suggesting you go with the borrow it because the rates overall are lower. That's the big difference between the two rates. The document entire commits to making capital improvements in town to improve service and improve efficiency like you've implied that we need to do. And that's the big difference again between the two is whether you borrow money to do capital improvements or whether you don't. If you borrow, your rates are lower, and that's why we're going that route.
So when we talk about a bill that a water sewer user is looking at and the difference between these two, and certainly there are other towns that do this where they have a flat rate and then they're adding on charges, in some cases 5 or 6 separate things. How will our ratepayers' bills look?
They're going to look probably simpler because you're going to have some. There'll be. I'm going to actually give that to Pat because he worked on laying that out. But what I can tell you is you still have one lingering water charge we have to continue to pay. We've lowered the II. At one time, the town would do a loan to cover work and spread that over quarterly. We've tried to actually get those down, and you're not going to see those charges anymore. It'll be just one bill. But you can probably, what she's asking is when someone gets a quarterly water and sewer bill, what's it going to look like? What are the items they're going to be charged for? They're going to be charged by CCF for water, CCF for sewer.
Mhm.
They're going to pay a $16 and change II fee, and then they're going to pay a couple other,
The two debt fees.
the 2 debt fees, but one of them comes off very soon.
Yes, but in terms of our 5-year outlook, they're on there all the way through the 5 years. But I believe on the sewer side, it's coming off just past that. So just past the 5-year window.
Mhm.
I'm not positive on
But,
that.
yeah,
One of them is coming off. I can look it up.
Is that what you were asking me, what exactly they're gonna see in the bill?
I think so. Was there
Okay.
discussion about taking the II charge off entirely and rolling it into the rate?
Most of it is, no, what the conversation was, do II funds that you see on your bill, your quarterly II charge, does that, we cut that in half
Right.
and said that future repairs to the system would be done with capital money, and it's listed in the capital plan. The monies that come in as II money, that's $16 a quarter, will be kept in escrow, for lack of a better description, so that if we end up in this situation again, we have the money in hand. If we don't, it goes back to retained earnings. Does that answer your question?
I don't know entirely. Here's
You're more worried
my,
about,
here's my assumed question that's gonna come up in May, and I'm looking forward to the questions from our residents, our ratepayers. When they look at their bills, I don't know how many of them really understand what's involved in the monies that they're looking at. How many of them really take a look and realize what I&I is? If we start giving them a flat rate and it encompasses what we're talking about here, which is 5 years worth of capital improvement rolled into that bill, the understanding now is that their usage and the repairs needed for the system are one rate, and we're pushing that forward and we're giving that to them as a consolidated number, right?
correct.
Okay, so
It's actually a simpler number.
it absolutely is a simpler number, but it requires that explanation of, here's your number, and what's included in this number is A, B, C, D, all the way
And
out.
that's our job. I think we have no choice but to tell them that.
It's not necessarily what we've been doing, right? We've
Right.
been separating out charges and in effect giving them the impression that some of the charges were temporary.
Right.
And that when they went away forever. And I maybe in retrospect, shame on us, because it was a little bit, I mean, it was true to a point, but the point ended where, in point of fact, another project was coming down the pipeline, no pun intended. So I want to ask again, so when we're looking at I&I, you made a concerted effort to decrease that number by 50%. Was there discussion about just taking it out entirely and rolling it into the rate?
There was, well, it is rolled into the rate. It's just, I mean, we could take it, I see what you're saying, so don't list II and just take, we could do that. We hadn't talked about it, but we wanted to make, I personally wanted people to know that we were taking steps to protect them in the future.
Okay.
So something that happened this fall wouldn't happen again. And that's a big part of this document.
Okay. I think,
And these are, I have to tell you, it's a conservative document. It's conservative on purpose, because we want to make sure that the bills get paid and we have protections for the residents in town. I can't stress that enough.
okay, so your version of conservative is 10 across the board water, 50, 20, 10, 5 sewer.
And I had said that earlier.
I know.
We're only going to approve one rate and review it again in a year.
Yep.
These are extremely optimistic there'll be changes, and
Yep.
some for the better, some for the worse.
So here's, for the commission, what I want to point out to you is that in between option 1 and option 2, when you look at those percentages, and we've been looking at page 10, if you look at page 11, it's quite a bit worse. If our goal here is to minimize this initial painful impact on the users, I don't know that option 2 is worth discussing.
Appear to be no.
That's ugly.
It may be more fiscally responsible in the idea that you're taking the hit up front, but that's an easy thing to say and a really hard thing to put into practice.
Right.
It's a big hit.
Yeah. What's the option that the experts are recommending? 1 again? They're all
all right.
They're all
He
lousy.
doesn't,
I'll go with
he's
1.
not enjoying the hot seat.
No, I don't mind it. I don't mind it. Well, the reality is, if you borrow money, ultimately you pay more in the end because you're paying financing costs. You're paying to borrow the money. But if you're looking at it on an annual basis and you're trying to keep rates more manageable, then option 1 makes a lot more sense.
I think your average blue collar worker is already at the limit.
Becky, did you get a chance to see this? There They're using a 4% number on borrowing. Does that sound about? I know.
They're creeping up.
They're creeping up.
Yeah, the interest rates are creeping up on debt. So I didn't have a chance to send this over to our financial advisor to ask, what the rates would be or what their estimate. Because I think we're looking at $3 million to borrow, according to this 5-year plan.
In
3 million
total,
in
yeah.
water.
Yeah, in total.
In total.
Yep.
So I did not have a chance to send that over to them to find out what that would. I do have one question, whether the interest is built into these FY '20 rates and FY '21s for the interest at 4%. Okay.
Okay, so we have questions. We want to run this by our financial advisors. What other things are we? Because what I'm thinking now is we'll need to come back and do a hearing. We have to do a hearing to set rates. What is your
Could you
schedule?
define it, just so you want to have another meeting of the Water and Sewer Commission for purposes of setting rates for FY '20?
Correct. It'll
Pending
need
the
to
out,
be a
pending the out, but
hearing.
I don't know if you can do that without combining the funds, but you can set the rates.
Well, we can set the rates,
Mhm.
and then I think our worst case scenario would be something doesn't happen at town meeting that we would like to happen, and we need to revisit what we did. That would probably, but we can set the rates. What is your, can you backdate us into your schedule as far as bill prep for the next quarter, 2 quarters?
This doesn't assume any changes in this.
It doesn't.
No.
So,
No.
however, we're gonna look most likely to, an informational sheet that probably is gonna need to go out to all the ratepayers explaining what's happening.
Sure.
So when does the next bill go out?
Well, that's,
End of April.
Yeah.
beginning of May.
Hang on, let me check my calendar.
Yeah, tax bills.
Oh, that's right. Why aren't I looking?
Every June 1st it'll be due.
Something like that, yeah. Yeah, they usually go out the end of April, they do end of May, the next quarter.
The envelopes get stuffed week before Easter? Or we're not doing it anymore, are we?
No, they
No.
go out,
They're
the
going-
bills go out, well, yeah, probably Easter. I'll have to confirm all
Okay.
the dates.
but I don't see there's any so you're asking to try and figure out when to set the,
No, once we set the rates, we have a lot of information to share. You have a lot of information to share
Plenty.
with our users. It needs to happen in some part, in some way, before town meeting. So the best time to do that is in their bills, so that they understand what's at stake on town meeting on May 11th, and what could change for them, even if we haven't set the rates yet. Which I do see what you're saying. You're kind of suggesting that we wait to set the rates until after town meeting. I get that. But we need to change the rates regardless, and they're going up. So you know what I mean? So I don't mean, and that's not funny, but we're gonna have to address it sooner rather than later, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the ratepayers need to have information.
Right.
And do it as like a contingency based on if this passes at town meeting, then this, or we go back and revisit it, like.
Yeah, we almost want to give them an if then, like you're talking about, like a flow chart where here's what's going to be happening at town meeting. If this happens at town meeting, your bill's going to most likely look like this with a range. If it doesn't, here's what your bill might look like with a range. We won't have set the rates at that point, so we can't give them a flat number.
okay,
But
we can do something like that.
But we know if the town meeting option does not pass, the combining of the funds, or creating the fund and combining the funds, then the rates are going to probably significantly go up.
well,
You'll have two things you'll have to deal with. You'll have to have the rates significantly go up,
More so than what we're looking at currently.
right? But at the same time, you've also got to go back and certify free cash and pay the deficit in the fall,
Right.
because that money won't go away. You can't raise the rates to cover your I don't think.
well, I don't know. We talked about it. We talked about raising rates for FY19 in order to cover our final quarter, which we expect to be in the red on.
No,
did
yeah,
talk
we're in the red now, so.
Oh, good. Are we missing any questions?
None that I can think of.
So, financial advisors, $3 million estimated. Joe will get you all this.
We've sent the town accountant and Becky
Oh,
everything
okay.
that you've seen
Oh, okay,
through the whole process.
great. Neil, any comments? Sorry to put you on the spot, but,
Not at this time.
okay. Is there anyone here who has any comments on the water or sewer rate structure? Yes. I've been very remiss tonight. Could you state your name and address for the record?
My address?
Yeah, name and street. Then we'll know his too, so I've covered two in one.
Barbara Ruschel on Maple Ave.
Thank you.
At what point in time, or maybe you've already discussed it and I've just missed it, but at what point in time would there start to be an exploration of our own water treatment plant?
You mean wastewater treatment?
Yeah, wastewater treatment plant, yeah.
We have gone down that road. We went down it pretty far, and it turned out there were only 3 or 4 locations, excuse me, that were even possibly viable. And I want to say, right, Skip, none of them turned out to be actually viable. Is that right?
That's what I was told.
Yeah. We can pull that information out though. So Joe, we can try to find that for you. We did go down this road. We're to maybe 8 years ago.
As much as 3 years ago.
Oh.
Other towns, you know, if we pulled another town in, and, you know, I don't know.
I professionally, as an engineer, I would have to tell you, Rutland sits tributary to the Ware River watershed and tributary to drinking water supplies that go to Worcester and Holden. I doubt that the state would let you site a wastewater treatment plant here in town. I would highly doubt that. The permitting, my point is, the permitting will be very difficult. I think the best thing to try and get the rates under control would do a better job negotiating with DCR come June. Not this June, but the following June. The transportation and treatment cost is the highest bill we pay. And that's what it costs to move wastewater from the town of Rutland through Holden and Worcester respectively. If we can get that rate under control, it might be a little more manageable.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we're at the end of the line. We have the furthest run to go. I hope that
Okay.
answers your question.
It does.
Anybody have anything else? Did we cover what we needed to cover tonight? Is there anything we missed? Anything we should be focusing on to make sure when we go to our next piece that we have everything we need?
I think we should try and make an effort to set a timeline as to how we want to proceed.
Okay.
You've decided to, by vote of the board, to combine the enterprise accounts, so I'll put together a warrant. I think we have to go through the exercise of documenting, so I'll put together a warrant, it'll be voted at town meeting, and then on that same calendar should be the rate changes, or how that's discussed and debated.
So, based on what we just talked about, are you looking for us to discuss and debate the rate changes in April or after town meeting? So sort of our only options.
I'm going to suggest April.
Okay.
And put them in draft form. So far,
our next meeting is April 8th, or we have the 22nd. And I guess that comes down to prep time.
Yeah.
I think we can continue to do it as part of our regular meetings. I don't think we need to do a separate night.
I'd rather go the 22nd.
Okay.
If it gets down to it and we feel like we need a separate one, Joe and I were planning on doing our joint meet and greet for the public on April 29th anyway.
Right.
So
But that was meant to be a town meeting info session,
correct.
right?
Yeah.
That would be a lot. Let's try to do 22nd.
Okay.
Which is Earth Day. Good timing. Okay. And just to confirm, we want that to be a hearing, but do you expect us to set the rates at that point? Or again, do you want to wait until after town meeting to see what our results are?
I think I'd want to wait.
Okay. So this will be another meeting of the Water Sewer Commissioners
Right.
to tie up loose ends, answer questions.
Correct.
Give
Because
a-
you also asked for some deliverables too. You want
We did.
comparison for out-of-town rates, historical development of the town of Rutland's rate over the last 5 years or so. Is there anything else you asked for?
I think our rate history for the past.
That's what I just said, yeah, the
Sorry,
town,
I
yeah.
heard comparables. Okay.
Are there any other deliverables you need?
So, through the chair, if we merge these two together, all right? The rest of us that are not on water sewer, we're not gonna, how do I wanna put this? Be liable for any of the bills from water and sewer? Right now, all the people in town are liable for water sewer bills, for water sewer payments. All right?
Correct.
So we merge these two together. Am I still gonna be expected to pay for their overage as a town taxpayer?
Can I answer that? Actually, Becky can answer that. So essentially, the rule for all of our revolving funds is that if they go in the red, the town is liable, without question, all of them. And we've had this discussion about recreation when it was an issue, all of
That's-
them. Every revolving fund, these would be the same issue. Yes,
What I
Carol.
can,
Oh, I'm sorry. That was my fault. Go ahead, Joe.
what I can say, Skip, is the intent is to try and not do that, and that's happened over the last
No,
couple of
that's the
years.
intent. It's always been that intent.
Yep.
But
Yeah. No, that's a hard
now,
answer.
now that we're merging both together, I can see a horror show myself, but, you know.
I don't know that it's any worse.
Doesn't eliminate the town's responsibility
Yeah,
to pay the
I
bill.
don't.
Well, it should.
I'm just
Carol,
thinking-
same thing. Can I circle back, because I
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
make
go
you,
ahead.
no, I didn't make you address
Oh,
yourself
you're
last
circling
time.
now back.
Go ahead. No, name and address.
Carol Martin's on Pleasantdale Road.
Thank you.
To Skip's point, I kind of figured we'd been paying, but now I know we are. Is anybody nervous about getting sued that 2/3 of the town are paying 1/3 of the town's bills? I mean, if I was a lawyer, you know, I mean, seems illegal somehow to me.
So anytime, at any town meeting, annual town meeting, when we go to town meeting, and it's usually a little mini Excel spreadsheet where we are approving the revolving funds, there should be, and if we're not being transparent about it, shame on us, but there should be an understanding by everyone voting that despite the fact that those revolving funds are not under the levy, that should they go in the red and should something go very, very wrong, the town is liable for those funds and any shortages.
There's still town accounts.
There's still town accounts.
Town as a whole has to be
Yeah.
a viable
Yep.
entity.
Well, then I won't get my law degree.
With that, yeah, Carol, with that too, just if I may, Mass General Law says basically if we didn't have the free cash to cover that, it'd be added as a surcharge onto everyone's tax bill in the town too. So those are the two legal options that we have.
That's the same discussion we've had at numerous town meetings when money was borrowed for water enterprise or for sewer enterprise. The complaint was always by various people would stand up and say, well, why aren't just the water and sewer users voting on this? And it was always explained by town council that the town is responsible.
Mhm.
So everybody has to vote on that borrowing because the town
Right.
is responsible.
But they had two accounts before. They had to borrow a little bit from one or the other. But now you're merging the two together. And you got one great big account.
Well, yeah, if it goes to town meeting, people agree to merge it, but that's gonna be a pretty good discussion on the town meeting floor, I'm sure.
Yes, it will.
Okay.
You guys gonna be there?
Like, when is it?
Perhaps.
Yeah, I know.
Vacation.
Perhaps.
Oh, geez, I'm out of the country.
Anything else?
No, unless you want a date for the hearing, but that could be set later.
We'll set that later. Since you've had this board here, is there any other water and sewer issue you want to talk about besides rates?
Does anybody have any off-the-cuff questions? No?
It's all about the rates.
I guess I'll ask one question,
Sure.
and it didn't come up tonight, and it was a little bit out of the realm of this, mainly because it's a little bit irrelevant, but it's relevant to other things, which is the majority of our bills are treatment and transportation, yes,
Yes,
but some of the bills are maintenance related.
absolutely.
It would probably be interesting to know percentage-wise what that break is. And moving forward, to have a discussion about the fact that with our system becoming more complex for us, and I know you come from a highly complex system in Worcester, but for Rutland, which started out with just simple gravity fed, coming into the center of town and heading out, we're well past that now. And how much of that, as we are taking on more and more complexities when it comes to pump stations, et cetera, and more lines that will themselves age, as they all do, it's not just our oldest lines that are aging, how much of that comes into play when we start talking about that percentage break between treatment and transportation, which we don't have so much control over relative to the contract, relative to what we're going to get charged outside, versus our system, and what we've created and what it's costing us to maintain it.
Okay, so you want answers to all of that right now?
Yeah, no. I think it's something worth talking about, but I think the biggest answer is seeing what you see of our system, and you're fairly new to it, a few months in. Is the complexity of our system hurting us? The fact that we're pumping so much up, and it's very, very little of anything new being added is gravity fed.
I don't think it's hurting you per se,
Okay.
but some basic costs that over time are going to come around and bite you. Electricity, you pay to pump. You need electricity here on the sewer to pump wastewater, and you need electricity at your water treatment plant because you pump there every day. Anything that's got a lot of mechanical or electromechanical moving parts, it's just like a car. When you have a 25-year-old car, you keep making repairs, but at some point you have to just replace the car. Anything that's a pump station or a water treatment plant or something along those lines, those costs start to add up to the point where you have to spend significant money. Unlike a gravity sewer main, which can go 50, 80, 100 years, stuff that relies on pumping infrastructure does require more frequent repair or replacement. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it starts.
So, if I may, it sounds like it's things we need to be mindful of in the projection of a half decade out and beyond.
And we've tried to take some of that into consideration as part of the capital plan, especially on the water side.
I could add something?
Sure.
81% right now approximately of the sewer costs are TNT related.
Okay.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
81% of the cost is transportation and treatment. So 81% of all the cost that we charge residents is to ship it out of town and treat it to put it back into Blackstone.
Okay.
The bulk of it doesn't pay for any of the system repairs or electricity or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And that's just the budgeted amount. The actuals will probably be higher than that.
81% is,
The budgeted amount.
you think the actuals will be higher?
Well, they are this year.
What are they this year?
Well, the way that we did our projections, we have it at 84% of the budget.
Okay. How much money is TNT?
Is the 84% that he's talking about, or 81%?
Could you put in?
81% is just under $1 million per year.
$1 million for transportation of solid waste,
No, wastewater.
wastewater, whatever, okay. Any idea how many gallons?
God, I don't know. 500,000. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'd have to get to that number.
If you would.
Is that, I guess, Pat, is this question for you? Is that a fairly typical break when we look at an overall cost to somebody for water sewer use? What's the typical break percentage-wise in system maintenance versus actual wastewater transport?
It varies, just as do the rates and how they're calculated in
Okay.
neighboring communities and different communities. To do we could look into, try to figure out some studies that are done and try to get you some information on that.
Okay. But again, it's
But
an
80%, for TNT seems like it would be on the higher end.
okay. In fairness, is that relatable to the fact that we are spending enough on I&I and maintenance? Does that make sense? If we double our I&I repair, for example, those percentages will change because we're spending more on the other side. We're spending more on system maintenance, and those percentages will change.
That's the intent,
That is the intent.
yes.
Okay, with a goal.
No, there's no way to put a number on that.
Okay.
Nothing else for me.
Thank you.
Anything else we should talk about, Joe?
No, I'm good.
We should-
I can tell you the last thing I wanted to do was raise rates, but I can't get around the numbers.
All right, thanks, Joe.
Thank you for everything you guys are doing. This is a lot of data. All right,
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
good night. If there is nothing further, could I get a motion to close the Water Sewer Commission meeting?
Motion to close the Water Sewer Commission hearing and return to our Board of Selectmen meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we are back, and it's time for public comment. Is there anyone here for public comments? Just generally? No? Okay. All right, we're gonna, yes. Oh, there, I do?
Dick.
Dick?
Yeah, Dick Williams, Overlook. Just a question that, I can't remember when I had mentioned to Jeff about your green community and, did you get a chance to, what I had mentioned to you about that? You were looking for extra things to do for grant money, you know, you had to get out there, you're looking to
Oh,
utilize some, and I had mentioned, how about some LED, street lights up here for crossing, or for the fire department, or something like that, you know, can't that be part of the green community type of thing, that kind of lighting?
Laura had a long list. Was that?
She did.
It can be, they proposed, I think, full LED streetlights for the town, so I'm sure we could whittle it down to those particular.
I know it belongs to Mass Dot, but I'm sick and tired of waiting for them, and I'd rather see us maybe, kick them and say, hey, you know, the heck with you, we'll do it, and just do it.
Do you like the lights in Holden?
I hate the lights in Holden,
Hate-
but I want the safety. You got crosswalks with no lights, and to me, that's not right. Not only that, when the fire truck or the police car gotta leave, why haven't you got lights out there to let them know that, hey, fire trucks are coming out? You know, you probably can see them and all that, but give them a heads up or something like, you know.
Okay.
There are other ways of utilizing that.
Just to answer those, Mr. Williams, on terms of the street lights, we actually have a test light being installed in the town this week. I don't remember where, but it's through National Grid. They're installing new LED lights throughout the town. We made sure that they aren't like Holden, and that they are they won't be hospital white. And each light has a dial, so even if it is too bright, we can go in and turn it down if needed. In terms of the flashers for a person pushing a button before they cross the street and they flash yellow, or if there's some municipalities that have a flash red when a fire truck is leaving. I'm currently working on a grant for that we can apply for come July 1st, and we'll know about that by October, November. So no promises there because it's just an application, but it's something that we're looking into. Laura with the Green Communities, again, did put out an extensive list on that. Most of the stuff in the Green Communities is fixing the infrastructure that we currently have rather than adding new. So replacing the lighting in existing buildings that the town owns, like we have here, or stuff like that. That's more what that is aimed at, and we are looking at other funding sources. Particularly with the National Grid one, just for example, with the streetlights, our savings and funding for that come through our very sizable reduction in the electric costs that we have, that we pay for our streetlights there. So that's why we're moving to the LEDs. But again, we know that the Holden lights are very unpopular. You don't want to feel like you're in a hospital room or like it's 12 noon at 12 midnight. So we did make sure to address that.
Thank you. And just one other thing, don't forget, electrical vehicles, wintertime, batteries go dead when it's really cold, fast, so please keep that in mind when you are looking into the electric vehicles. On Central Mass, when they talked about bringing in the buses, they had a big time to make sure that the bus was gonna be able to complete its route without the battery going dead on it in the cold weather. So, just keep that in mind. Thank you. Other things later on, next month.
All right, thank you, Dick. On to you, Mike.
Well, thank you very much, Dick, for tracking one off the list that I don't have to say there, so we're good there. The streetlights being installed this week is a test. When we figure out where that is, I'll make sure the board members know. If you go to the back of your binders for the board members under town departments, I did put a couple papers in there for an update. That way you can have some backup. First item on my list was a update from the Wachusett School District Town Administrators meeting. The town administrators for all the member towns meet monthly with the central office superintendent, business administrator, and assistant superintendent to go over some stuff that's going on with the school department. They did inform us that they do intend to move forward with the soccer field with the E&D, unless any town calls a special town meeting. To do that, again, the process, like was said at the last meeting, was if a town wants to go against approving the use of E&D funds, excess and deficiency for those watching on TV. For the soccer field, they'd have 45 days to call a town meeting, whether annual or special. It looks like with this timeline, it'd have to be a special, which would cost the town money in order to do that as well. But again, that would take one town to fail, and inaction done by any town, that means no movement on it, is counted as a de facto yes on that. The budget was reduced by $100,000 from the school department, basically from a 3.9% increase to a 3.8%. We saw some savings on that, a couple $1,000. And the school did just have their excess and deficiency for this past fiscal year certified at $1.3 million. You'll see attached behind my report is a letter from Director Buckley that looks like this. A couple of the board members requested a road repair schedule, and this is his rough adjustment for that, and you can see some of the work that's being done and some of the information that goes behind road repair, pothole repair, and things like that. So that information is available through the DPW, my office as well, but for your information, that is there. We're currently working with the Finance Committee every Thursday night at 7 o'clock to talk about the FY20 budget. As it currently stands, just as an update from where we were before, last time we met, we were $265,000 in the hole. We're down to 71. So we're progressing there. We're getting closer, and we'll get there. We have a new executive assistant in the Town Administrator Board of Selectmen's office. Laura Paradise has been appointed to the position. Again, this is combining the administrative secretary and the general secretary's positions into one full-time position. And so far, it's increased the efficiency in the office just in the first week, and we can see that very clear. So thank you to Laura for taking on the
Thanks,
job.
Laura.
Good job. Over the next coming weeks and months, one of the first things I did was I invited all of the governor's cabinet out to Rutland for tours and to just discuss the ways that their secretariats affect what's going on in Rutland. And we've had pretty good responses so far. On Monday, Secretary Acosta will be in town. She's the Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development. So we'll be meeting on Monday. And then on Tuesday, Deputy Secretary McGorthy will be coming out. A couple of you will remember Jay Ash, the former Secretary of Economic Development and Housing. He has since moved on and is no longer with the administration and has been replaced by Secretary Mike Kennelly. Secretary Kennelly lives out in the Boston area, and his Deputy Secretary, Tim McGorthy, lives in Worcester. So Deputy Secretary McGorthy will be here on Tuesday to tour Rutland, as well as have some time to talk with some of the officials in the town as to ways we can help sell Rutland and increase our economic development efforts here. We've also heard back from Secretary Stutters from the Executive Office of Health and Human Services. That's the secretariat that oversees things like veteran services, senior centers, different health-related issues, DPH. And then Secretary Matthew Beaton from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, DEP, DCR. DCR is partly under him and partly under the Economic and Housing Development. So we've got movement on some of our state policymakers coming out to town, and as those come in, I'll be sure to keep you updated on that and update you on how those meetings go as well. We are still working on scheduling a joint meeting of CIPC, the Finance Committee, and the Board of Selectmen to discuss town warrant items as they come up. That way, the three groups will be able to have a discussion on those at once, so that when town meeting comes, there's a clear idea of what's on the warrant by all three groups that are involved. And then Director Moriarty is currently working on a proposal to increase our security protocols in our town buildings, both town administrative side and the buildings that we lease to the school, including cameras, new lock systems, and things of that. As that progresses further, we'll be sure to update you on that. And just as a final note, the town administrator's office will be closed on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week, as I will be in Boston for procurement officer trainings. So,
Excellent.
one of 3 days of 9 total, but the rest are spread out throughout the remainder of the calendar year. And that is my update. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
unless there's any questions on anything.
No?
Doing great.
Thank you.
Questions? No? Okay, onward to new business. Pest management, Leah, that was something you wanted to talk about? You want an introduction into this? And I don't think we have anything
No, there's
written,
no
right?
Right. So I think one of the principals in town had reached out to the town administrator's office and the school district with concerns about ticks at
The DPW.
Oh, and DPW, sorry. With ticks at the field. It's the Glenwood School Field. And so we are reviewing the Wachusett Regional School District pest management policy and looking at other town policies to try to form a cohesive plan moving forward, being a little bit more proactive. I think last year there was a little bit of cutback that was done, but I think that was the end of the summer, beginning of the fall. And so before going straight to applying pesticides, if there are other more organic and mechanical mechanisms that we can try before spraying. Is that, I think,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything, there's no action, I think, on our part, other than, I believe Joe's aware.
Yeah, Joe's been made aware. He's also reached out to the Department of Public Health to see if there are, any standards regarding spraying pesticides on a school field, but also to see if there's any benchmark policies that if a field gets this bad, then there needs to be, we're required to do something to, like an immediate, like a spray type thing to get it, and then moving forward, manage it in a more environmentally friendly way. So he is currently working and studying on that on top of all the water sewer stuff. So that just kind of got at the back envelope for this week, but he's working on it, and he's reached out to DPH, and he has gotten some movement on it. He's just waiting for a response from them on whether there is that benchmark there to begin with.
And I know it's just an ongoing issue, so I just wanted to make sure that we, as a board, were kind of aware that it's still an ongoing issue and just...
Right, so I think what we found, because Leah and I have looked into it a little bit, the IPM for the schools, and each school property across the district has an IPM for both the interior and the exterior, does not address ticks. It's probably something that the school committee should look at, and, you know, it's possible that we as a board could reach out to the school committee and suggest that as an effort on their part. And also within the MGL, the benchmark, you know, using your word, for spraying on a school property was fairly high, and it was sort of after all other options had been exhausted, which at this point, we've tried nothing other than the single mechanical clearing in the fall. So hopefully they can make some quick progress this spring because we're probably already in it.
Yeah.
Tick season, I think, has started.
I did speak to Dr. McCall from the school department on this. He informed me that his only concern is, I guess there was a couple years ago, a nonprofit went and sprayed school fields without notifying the school prior to that.
Yeah.
So, and the way that conversation went was, so long as the proper protocols were followed, the school department's not against it, but they just need to see that there's a process being followed first. So whether that is the state standards or something along those lines.
I would be surprised that the district would hand that over to us. It's their school property, their school grounds. Obviously, because it's a soccer field, a nonprofit uses it as well, and I assume could come up with something that everyone might be amenable to, but.
But I think the process was the process would go through before any spraying or anything was done would come through town offices, DPW,
Yeah.
town administrator, and school.
Yeah. There's actually a strict process outlined by the state for if we do spray, what we have to do, and it also involves sending abutters notices, just as if there was a public hearing before the planning board.
Yeah.
So.
We also have issues at that location with wetland stick, remember? It almost might have to be flagged before anything could be done. That's a delicate location to begin with. Okay, so action items moving forward.
So hopefully following up with some more of the mechanical issues, talking maybe with DPW, seeing, it sounds like we're talking about pest management specifically at the Glenwood soccer field, the Glenwood school soccer field in the back. But just, I think you had some follow-up that you were maybe.
Still working on it.
Yeah, and obviously water sewer is, the bulk of the time this week, so.
Ever.
I got contacted the folks from Central Mass Mosquito Control.
Yep.
And it's basically a state office, and they made some recommendations on things we could do there, but I gotta walk the site.
Yeah. Okay. So I think just
And they made suggestions on things you can do in lieu of spring.
right, and I think that's kind of our hope is to try to have a concerted effort this spring and going forward before just going straight to spraying.
Well, the spraying's just not under our purview. The mechanical controls fall under us maintaining the lawns and the grounds because it's the town that mows that soccer field. So bringing the brush hog in, taking out some of the brush that's closer. We have the same issue at Naquag at the far field. I can see that being sort of under our purview, under your purview. Anything past that, I think their outside IPM needs to come into play. They need to have some internal discussions about what they want to do. So I don't know if do you have any experience of the community that had its own municipal pesticide herbicide policy? I know some do, we don't.
I'd have to look.
Okay. Did Gardner?
No.
No, I thought that the municipalities kind of,
Worcester had one for Green Hill.
okay.
The
Oh,
golf course.
okay. So maybe location specific.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But believe it or not, some of it's covered under stormwater,
Yeah.
Oh,
not,
okay.
that's where that comes out.
Yep. Okay. All right, thank you. Anything else?
As we get updates, we'll let you know.
Thank you. Appointment policy. So you actually have a copy of the appointment policy, which is fairly new, in your policy and procedure section. It was created 2 years ago, updated last April, almost exactly a year ago. And I think, were there board members that had questions about possibly amending it again?
Yes, that's when I first started. I received this question to. I'm sorry, I'm looking for it. I should
What
stop.
page?
It's the first thing, well, at least on mine, it's the first thing after the red policy and procedure. Yep. There it is.
To talk to that, when I first started, there were a couple board members who approached me to see how other towns that are comparable to Rutland have appointment policies with regard to good standing financially with the town. Basically on the idea that we have a good standing bylaw that says that if someone is delinquent on any payments owed to the town, that there would be, that we withhold any building permits, licenses, things like that, from those applicants. So there was a question that was raised when I first started to me to explore and draft a draft policy similar to that in terms of consideration for appointment to town board or committees that are underneath the purview of the selectmen that are not elected and have the main requirements are just vote by board of selectmen for these matters.
So is what you drafted, which is in our new business folder,
Yes.
meant to be an addition to the policy?
Yes.
Okay.
And that can be set by board vote, or we?
Yeah, because that is because appointment to these commissions and things of that nature are by board vote. This is a simple board vote. If it was, we can't do this for, say, an elected position, because that would have to be a town meeting vote, because right now the only thing that you need to do to be elected is be a registered voter. We can't set an elected regulation, but where these are appointments by the selectmen, and it would only fall under those that are appointed by the Board of Selectmen, not planning board or any other board of that nature, or those by me for
So-
town employees.
Is this before us tonight here, a change of this policy, or you just kind of?
I mean, it's what I came up with, based on what I saw in other towns. It's the pleasure of the board at that matter, I guess.
I think we would consider this first reading,
Yeah.
so maybe
Yeah.
everybody can take a look at it, make comments back. We could bring it back as soon as next meeting,
Yeah.
either for action or for second reading.
We're gonna, shift this out to all the other boards and committees to see what they think? Or is this something we're gonna make the decision on?
So I think when we first drafted, and it was really Margaret who did the board and committee appointment policy and procedure, I think she did reach out kind of across the board.
Yeah, but there's a lot of changes in this.
I'd like to see some comparables here. Delinquent on taxes, have you seen anything about a good moral character clause? In general, if somebody is,
Codifying that into a policy, I understand what you're saying completely, don't get me
yeah.
wrong.
similar to like a pistol permit application or something like that, you
I
know?
get that, yeah. It just,
You're not-
for a public service position, that's where it gets iffy legally if it were to be challenged, because the question can be made that one person's moral compass can be facing north while the other person's moral compass is facing south at the same time, on the same person who's in front of them. So where this is a more objective matter in that we can pull a list from the tax collector's office that lists everyone in the town who's delinquent on any payment,
Yeah.
name and amount. It is a fair point to make, don't get me wrong. It's just this one's where that's more subjective in the eyes of being challenged in court versus objective. I guess the idea is that can be made at the decision of the voter as to why they're voting a certain way for the appointment rather than getting them to get their foot in the door to begin with.
Because me reading this, if something comes from a board like conservation, agricultural department, their recommendations, it almost looks like their recommendation doesn't mean anything.
No, so basically this, I think what came up was a request that the board and committee appointment policy looked similar to the town's policy, which is relatively new as well, for giving out permits. So people who will come in and apply for a building permit may not
No,
get
this
that
got-
permit.
This has got nothing to do with,
It does.
in my eyes, this is not, this is appointments to individuals like anybody out there onto a committee.
Right. That they
Right.
would not be appointed
They would not be appointed if they owe back taxes.
if they had any financial obligation to the town. You're right.
Okay.
Not even just taxes.
Okay, all right.
And again, this is a very draft, so changes can be made. This again, just
See-
was a recommendation I received.
Is this, there's no input from any of the other boards coming in on this. This is
No, not
all-
yet. This is all just based off what I've seen. That's why it's coming here for discussion. I can certainly go to the other boards and commissions and get input too.
I kind of would if it was me. I mean,
Yeah, share it with them. I like that idea.
Yeah.
everybody, everybody in this room, myself included, has owed taxes, you know? And times aren't great, you know, so you fall behind in taxes, or you fall behind in your real estate, your excise taxes, or whatever. And you mean to say that that person is, you know, because he has a financial problem, is not eligible for helping the town out on boards and whatever? I mean, I'm sorry, that doesn't look right in my eyes. And I'm old-fashioned, yes, I'll admit that. I'm thick-headed and old-fashioned. So, I mean, it's up, I'm only one vote, but I think it should go out to conservation, agricultural, whoever, and have them put their 2 cents into it, and probably won't be realized, but
I have a has any consideration been if people owe back whatever, but have had conversations with the town to either establish a payment plan or
now you
something?
get into people's personal lives now.
No. I mean, well, this is some of the personal lives too, but I'm saying if there's an established payment plan that is actually being followed, would that
I mean, if they're on
be
a
considered?
payment plan, they're on good standing.
Okay,
in town
that,
council.
I guess it was my question, that's good.
That's what I was gonna ask, whether that wording is in there, because when you withhold a license or a permit, if there's a payment plan in place, or if there is, if it's not more delinquent than a year, so they missed the fourth quarter payment, I'm not gonna hold up their license, they're not gonna not be appointed because they missed a payment, you know what I mean? So it's gonna be delinquent for more than a year, and if they have a payment plan in place, they're still can be appointed, or they can still get their license. I don't know if that's the wording in this suggestion there, but.
I guess that helps clarify my question, I guess, is what constitutes good financial standing, but it sounds like a payment plan or a single missed payment or something is not necessarily a bad financial standing, or does not equal a bad financial standing, so I guess that was.
The key word is delinquent. If they're working something out with the town, then they're not delinquent, right?
Well,
If,
they're delinquent, but they're making payments to get not delinquent. How's that? There's an agreement with the town so that they're making payments. They are delinquent on their taxes, but usually there's a time frame on that too, like if they're delinquent more than a year, that's when the issue, and they haven't come in to start making payments or do anything to address the issue, so.
So let's do this. You're gonna send this out for feedback to all of let's do it to everybody, elected boards, all the committees that are affected by this. And then, can you ask the question on the listserv for all the other towns?
Sure. Yeah.
And see who
Yeah.
has something like this.
what
We
the
know,
other towns doing.
we know lots of them have it for permits, lots. But this is kind of another animal.
Yeah.
Great.
It's hard enough for us to find people to fill these committees to begin with.
I think it needs a little wordsmithing. I mean, there's egregious, and then there's financial woes for that. I'm curious to see what other towns
Yeah.
do, and I'm also curious to see on the behavioral aspect of the moral character issue if somebody is, I don't know what. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. No, I got
Like
you.
without a conviction, but something that would fall unsightly on the town or something like that, you know? But isn't that what the appointment review is for? As the appointing authority?
Yes, but I'm not sure what to say. I think if you look at the policy as written, if you look under risk exposure, it might be what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
The
right,
idea
yeah.
that there might be potential conflicts that would create a risk on a municipal level. I don't think I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm guessing that that's sort of what you're getting at.
That's
that
what I'm
we-
getting at,
We
yep.
don't want to put the town at risk, because of an appointment that ends up having, a significant and notable conflict.
Yeah.
It's possible that the financial aspect that came up because of this is a piece of that, but I don't know.
Where are you seeing that section on the risk?
So on the original
What page?
policy and procedure, under policy, right in the middle, there are criteria that we follow. And the understanding, I think, was, because it wasn't happening in the past, was that it wasn't meant to be just arbitrary. That there were actual criteria for, and to Skip's point, he's kind of saying, well, we have a hard time finding people. There are other towns that get multiple applicants, and you wanted to have some criteria in place. And certainly with the town growing, you would hope that for all of our boards and commissions, we'll continue to see increase in interest, not decreased. Skip's kind of shaking his head, but we might. And I think that's where it stemmed from.
All right.
Okay. So we're gonna circle back to that, another meeting, get some due diligence.
Yeah.
Great.
But we're giving him the go-ahead to go ahead and disseminate this to the boards, saying, hey, this is what we're looking at.
I
It's
think
a draft,
everybody-
your input.
Yeah. But I would say, Mike, can we do it as a draft addendum to the existing?
Yeah.
Is that, as opposed to a separate, because
Yeah.
somebody might think it's a replacement.
Oh,
which
okay.
and I knew it wasn't, but.
Yeah, no, I can add that to
Okay,
the end
great.
of it.
All right, moving on, we had a resignation from the school committee. You have that letter in your new business. Charles Whitkiss resigned from his elected position on the school committee effective March 14th. His 3-year seat is up for re-election in May.
So we got this resignation in time for
Well,
the vacancy to be on
his
the
seat
ballot.
was up anyway, so it was
Oh, it
already.
was.
Yeah, it was
He's-
already. Here's the issue, and I don't know.
The resignation?
We've
Mike-
done that in the past.
I don't know if Mike has a clarification. Do you have a clarification for us?
No, there's conflict in the answers I've gotten.
Conflict. Yeah, so it's unclear to many people under the MGL, if you look at the cover letter, whether the combination of the school committee and the Board of Selectmen appoint a replacement in the interim,
Oh,
because they have quite a bit going on right now and they want to have a full school committee.
I got you.
Yeah.
There's nobody stepping forward though, right? Last I
None yet
checked, so
Nobody pulled papers,
for that seat.
right?
Joe
I'd have
did
to-
for the
APAC. I'd have to
APAC,
check.
but I don't.
Okay.
I think papers were due today, so I'd have to check tomorrow.
I think if somebody was interested,
5 o'clock today. Yeah.
that would be worth a discussion. Otherwise, what's the difference between resigning now or just letting it expire?
Just
Well-
having a vote between now and elections, I guess.
Or does it give somebody an unfair advantage if there was a true race?
No, I think it's more about whether or not the school committee is planning to try to fill the vacancy on its own. Do we know if
It's a-
it's on
There's
there?
there's a question as to whether it's the school committee's purview to fill their vacancies or whether it's the board's purview to fill the vacancy.
We did it ourselves
Yes,
before.
we did, and Holden just did it a year ago, so I'm
I think yeah.
curious as to why this is coming up now. The Board of Selectmen of the town
Yeah.
has always appointed
Always
a
appointed.
replacement.
Fill and finish the seat.
As it should be.
Can we check with Anita, see if anybody
Yeah, I can.
Polls?
Sure.
were expressed an interest? I mean, that would make it a little bit easier.
Sure.
Well, it would, but they need somebody for the next 6 weeks. They
Mhm.
want somebody for the next 6
Yeah,
weeks.
we need somebody now.
Maybe we want to put it out on our town website.
Sure.
If there's a vacancy that needs to be filled immediately. And if
Mhm.
there's anybody interested, they can
Apply.
apply.
But, okay. So we
Can I
need,
just thank Charlie for his service? I mean,
Oh my
he's
gosh.
been on school committee for
Long time.
a number of years, so that's definitely a big chore, and we appreciate his service.
You will be missed. Big shoes to fill. He was always a voice of reason at the school committee meetings and a voice for Rutland. It was great. Okay, next.
well, we're gonna accept it, right? We're gonna,
I don't believe we have to accept it because he was a school committee elected member. They accepted his resignation. Is
They
that
did.
correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Which could be where the confusion comes in the end as to they accept the
Yeah.
resignation, we appoint the replacement, or you appoint the replacement. type thing.
Yep.
all right
True
then.
enough. Next, you have a memo from Anita Carlson regarding the Rutland Board of Registrars. She has a recommendation for an appointment of Diane Landquist, who has consented to serve for another 3 years. If there are any questions, or I would take a motion.
Motion by Diane M. Lindquist to, a 3-year term as Board of Registers, if it's a 3-year term.
Yep, 3-year term effective April 1st, and she is registered Republican.
Second.
Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Next, Wachusett Safety Grant application.
At the monthly town administrator meeting held with the school district, Superintendent McCall informed the town administrators that he is applying for a new grant being offered through the governor's office for $80,000 to purchase new. It's meant to update security systems in schools. He was looking to apply to put new front-facing cameras at all of the doors. That way, when someone buzzes in, the office staff can actually see who's standing at the door. Currently, at some of the school buildings, if you push the button, the camera faces directly out rather than at the door, so you can see the parking lot, but you can't actually see who's facing at the door, and they have to mic the person over so that they stand there to see them. In order to do that, the governor's office, through the grant process, is requiring that any school districts that apply get signatures from every town administrator, police chief, and fire chief out of member towns in the district. So myself, Chief Knipe, and Chief Monaco would need authorization to sign on behalf of the town. Again, it's an application for a grant. We may get it, we may not. And I should say, just because I mentioned this earlier, that the district did say, should they get the grant and install the new cameras, that they would work with Director Moriarty to make sure that whatever camera system gets installed would be compatible with whatever he's working on as well for updating the security systems in the school buildings and the town buildings as well.
Be nice to get. I'll make that motion, authorizing the town administrator, fire chief, and the police chief to sign the application, the grant application.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And any other personal note you want to talk it up? I'd love to win that.
Yeah. It'll be competitive. This is the first year it's being offered. In fact, if you look at the rubric, the first 2 items where you can get the most points is if your front door doesn't lock and if your classroom doors don't lock, which apparently is an issue with many of the schools out west, is that doors require a physical locking device to lock, which you can't have during the day, because if there's ever a fire and needs to exit, you have to have free access there. So schools that currently don't have locking doors, which apparently there are a fair share of them, we're going to get higher priority there, but we're hoping that this is successful for safety in our students in the current climate.
All right, Constellation New Energy contract with 3-year, nope,
Our
3 or 4-year proposal.
Yes, our contract with Constellation expired between the transition time of Margaret and Bob, and we found this out a couple of weeks ago when we got a bill from Constellation that as soon as the contract expires, we get put on a variable monthly rate that fluctuates greatly, and since the contract expired prior to Joe or I starting here, it just kind of got passed through the cracks. So this is to avoid having that happen in the meantime. We just got a bill from Constellation for $6,000 for
Another one for 3.
and another one for 3 because of the months that went with the variable rate, compared to having a flat rate like this where we get a constant rate for this amount of time. So this will help save that from happening in the near future.
What do you need
We
from
did
us?
shop around.
You did shop around?
We did shop around. Constellation with a contract is the cheapest option.
Not cheapest if we count the 3 months that they charge us exorbitant rates of what, 18 cents?
Yeah,
18?
about. So what we would need is authorization to sign the contract with Constellation, but we'd also need a option as to which the board would prefer with the 2, 3, 4 year contract, through a motion to just authorize us to sign the contract of year choice. We can go up to 4 years. This isn't one of those contracts where we're legally required to hold at 3. And again, we did shop around with other electrical suppliers, and this was the best deal that we
Best
could find.
deal, it's not gonna go down anytime, right? So,
Correct.
you gotta have electric. So what are you looking for, the 48 month?
It would help. Yeah, I think that's the best option.
Mike, you want to clarify that's all for town facilities?
Yeah, that's town facilities only. No, we're not affecting the residents here. I should also say,
Only for our building
yes.
and pump station.
Right.
Yeah. And I do have to say that with the lower rate that we're obviously going to be receiving from not being at the variable winter rate that we currently are at, with the efficiency upgrades that we're doing through the Green Communities program, we should be, and the streetlight savings as well, we should be seeing energy savings anyway. So getting the lower rate on top of that would help just
It's a-
increase our efficiencies and all.
More predictable too.
I know this is ultimately, I don't even want to say that. I know we bear responsibility in some of this. However, Constellation didn't reach out. Where was our rep in all this, as they just magically allowed our contract to expire and didn't drop a dime? I'm a little frustrated. So is this backdated at all? Did they offer us anything?
They, how do I word that? They supposedly, according to them, reached out during the interim period. We're still in discussions with our rep regarding this. We can see what I did raise that actually with him verbatim, and he said he's seeing what he can do, but the next bill is coming soon, and if we don't sign this, there's no rush because we can. I don't want to rush an important policy decision like this either. But I am in conversations with James, our representative, on this.
Yes. Can you
Are you
identify
obligated?
yourself?
Randy Jordan Muscapog.
Thank
Are you obligated to stay with them? You have a tremendous amount of solar, and you have another power plant in town that you possibly could buy power from.
Unfortunately, they're not offering power purchase for the municipality. None of them have. They're all selling it elsewhere. It's too bad, too. Because
We did try that. I will say that.
Yeah, I know. Wouldn't you think we'd be?
I might be speaking out of turn, but our facility in Spencer, anaerobic digestion, has to sell to a municipality that's not currently sold. We may be able to do to you, the town of Rutland, while you're still in the same load zone which you are. Again, way over my head, but just throwing the bone out there that.
What are our risks if we sign?
This is just the rate term proposal. The
Right.
other aspects of the contract are to be negotiated after they have a rate from us. I asked that question. I thought it was backwards, personally, myself, that we got a rate and then we talk about everything else that's in a contract. That's why we don't have an actual contract here in front of you. If the board would like, we could propose a rate out of their suggested sheet and then come back when we have a contract for authorization to sign it when you see the full contract as it is. But they were looking to negotiate that with myself and Joe after they get the initial approval on a rate.
I would actually think we're better off agreeing to a rate without a contract. They can't hold us to
Yeah, they
anything.
couldn't hold it to it then.
Yeah, that's true.
But the question is, if we were to leave Constellation because something magical worked out and one of our solar facilities could provide municipal power, can we just walk away from Constellation? That's the question.
I can certainly
In
ask.
the absence of a contract, I don't see why not.
Exactly.
The other question is, should we authorize Mike and Joe to continue working on this with the understanding that this would kind of be our maximum right now? If anything went higher than this, then to come back to us? Or, I don't know. That gives them some leeway to do some talking without, I don't know.
How long did we have them before?
I think it was a 4-year contract the last time too.
There were no issues, no concerns.
No, they've actually been good. And we looked into even the one that's out in Pioneer Valley, the big group.
Eversource?
No.
No.
No. purchasing, municipal purchasing.
Yeah.
No, they've been fine. Better than National Grid.
There's no issue with that.
There has not been. They've been better than National Grid, numbers-wise, by a lot. I'm not seeing any risk in approving this rate. It expires in 2 days. We have a bill coming up. I'd much rather get this rate than the rate they've been charging us.
Is it a good rate? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Compared to the other ones, it is yeah.
I mean, do you see a big drastic change in the solar world in the next 4 years would bail us out otherwise?
There's also a list of approved vendors on the state side that we have to look at too, so it all depends on, if we do get a solar field, then we have to make sure that they fall under the state's approved municipal electricity vendor list either too.
I mean, are we locked in for 4 years of this if suddenly we get a...
Right.
We are, right?
But no, because we don't have a contract.
Yeah, there's no contract. They're looking just for a rate to build a
Lock it in.
contract around now. Because right now, technically, if we wanted to go with a different supplier for the variable rate, all I'd have to do is call tomorrow and be like, starting this afternoon at noon, I'd like to be put on National Grid instead of Constellation, and then they just move us like that.
What were the rates we were paying when the variable? When it went
they
variable,
were-
You don't know? Was it
They were up
significantly
there.
higher?
Yeah, very
Was it
much.
higher?
Very.
Say 18?
It was around 18, yeah.
Okay.
And I
so
think
we're-
National Grid's hovering around 14, 15.
It's fair market value.
It all depends on when you go. It's why, it's you pay a higher rate during the first 6 months and a lower rate in the next 6 months. National Grid, by law, is required to go out to bid, or electrical suppliers are allowed to go out to bid twice a year. So you'll see, once those 2 periods hits, those are when the prices are at their highest, because those are the 2 legally allowed dates that electric suppliers are allowed to go out to see which suppliers they put through their power lines.
Joe, did you look at this? These numbers?
Not particularly, no.
Take a look and let us know if you're good at this. It's basically 10 cents. 0.10. Down from 0.18. Gotta squeeze every penny. This stage.
Where do you see the 1.8? Not to be.
What
Well,
else
he
did they
said
charge
the-
us without
the-
the contract?
The variable that was hitting us last winter.
What were we paying before the contract ran out?
Constellation.
No, what were we paying? With the
Oh,
rate?
what rate?
I don't know.
I thought it was
Something
11,
on here is
actually.
Yeah, it's the current.
Point-
It's the
Rate
current
is
rate. That's
11.
Yeah, it's
3.
11.
Where'd the 0.18 come from?
that's the monthly variable. If you're not on a contract, you get whatever
That's what
rate that
If we don't
day
make a
is at.
decision in 2 days,
Mark
we're
it.
going right
Yeah.
up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
So Joe, take a lookie.
So what was your question? I'm sorry?
Are you good with it?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
All right.
You go for 10 years. If you go 4 years, you get a 10-2.
Mhm.
Eddie Jordan, Muscatine, is that just your rate? Do you pay transmission on top of that?
They don't do any pass-through costs, which is kind of nice about Constellation. So yeah, that's their 100%. 100%. That's the rate. That's it. Done.
You don't pay, I mean, like your bill at home is only 10 or 12 cents, but then you trade transmission and all that on top of it.
Total budget includes charges associated with transmission services.
And it's 10.
Doesn't
10
include
cents.
taxes.
0.102.
I just got we can sell you power. We have power available if you'd like power, but we couldn't compete with 10 cents.
Oh.
The National Grid one is 10%.
Oh.
And they'll give you a 20-year contract.
Okay, I'm gonna suggest that maybe we have a motion to allow Mike and Joe to contact Constellation, take this rate for the 4 years. However, to continue to research this possibility, because at this point, in the absence of a contract, if something really grand came out, I don't think Constellation could hold us.
Yeah. Until there's a contract signed, they can't. No.
You got that, Laura? So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I guess it's unanimous. All right, so you have authorization to pursue any of these
Okay.
in the interim, but we've authorized the 48-month, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Personnel policies.
These were presented to the board at a previous date. Now that we are getting to a point where we're pretty much done with the negotiation process for all of our collective bargaining units, we had previously mentioned the possibility of extending these 4 policies regarding sick time toward non-union employees. I spoke with the department heads, and they were in favor of this as well.
They were or weren't?
They were.
Were.
Becky and I are currently working on some of the logistics side of these. But again, just for the record, I'm going to start at the bottom because that's going to be the one that comes up that sets the pace for the rest of it. Is right now town employees earn 10 hours of sick time every month that they work. This would just upfront that 120 hours come July 1st. It cuts down on the administrative side of stuff rather than having to go in once a month and add the 10 hours. You put it in once on July 1st, and then you're good for the year. And also just makes it so that people can keep track of it. If an employee's out sick on the 7th, or if an employee's out sick on the 27th, they don't have to wait the 3 days to not be in the office before they get their next 10 hours. And in the meantime, they're getting everyone else sick, and we just cause a sick issue. At the top, just as a way to avoid people abusing sick time, and this is popular in many different cities and towns, it's called sick incentive time. It's for every 1 month that an employee chooses not to use their sick time. They get 3 hours of what's considered similar to personal time. It's sick incentive time. After the checks with all the different bargaining units, the non-union clerical staff, the non-union department heads, the request was made to see if some could carry over. So that's why that 36 is there just as a placeholder. The idea is that we don't want people earning time throughout the year that then come June we have everyone out of the office because they need to use it before they lose it. Personal days are different in that they're upfronted come the first of the fiscal year. So you get your 4 days up front. You get your vacation time up front. But where this is earned for every month that sick time isn't used, then you technically could save up to a week of time come June, and then we have no one in that last week of June. So that's why having somewhat of a rollover buffer.
Just
Yes, go ahead.
clarification, this is for non-union employees, right?
Yes. Yep.
And this is comparable to what
Yes.
the unions are getting, right? So, okay,
Yeah.
done.
Just to help spread the wealth. The next one is a sharing sick time policy. One of the things that when I started here, and I know I've said this a lot, that was asked a fair amount of time from all of the unions that we negotiated with this year, our department heads, our non-union employees, is for the creation of a sick bank. And the actual creation of a sick bank would put a lot of work on the treasurer's office that oversees time, and that if someone's donating a week here or a week there or a week there for just use for any time in the future, it can actually be cumbersome and just hard to keep a paper trail with. So what this policy proposes is that for any employee who's exhausted any of their available time that they already have allotted to them, a request can be made to the town administrator's office for an all-call, basically, to be put out. And then a notice will be put out that there's an employee who's out of time, who needs to be out for an extended, legitimate reason of time for a sick-related, so like a doctor's note or something like that, and requesting people to donate their unused time toward that employee. Budgetary-wise, it's a wash, because if that employee ended up calling out sick at the same time the other employee was out, we'd be paying that employee. So they're not using their time. They have it. They're donating it to that employee who's out so that they have some time allocated to them. The reason it's coming for me for approval is to make sure that when an employee puts an all-call out, they don't then have 3 years of sick time all of a sudden added to their belt because so many people chose to donate. So it's a way to just keep a track and a check and a balance on that process while still creating a system that helps our employees. One thing that is clarified in there, because this would be townwide, inter-union, inter-non-union, interdepartmental, is that an employee who receives these benefits would be getting paid at their own rate. So for instance, if a sergeant at the police department decides they'd like to donate a week of time to a new member of the clerical staff who's getting paid at a lower rate than the sergeant, then that clerical staff that's out is getting paid at the clerical staff rate that they're currently getting paid, not the sergeant's rate, even though the sergeant's the one who donated that time.
And on the flip side, if the clerical is donating to the sergeant, then
Then it'd be at the sergeant's rate, not the clerical
sergeant's
rate. Yeah. That's just to make sure that there's no ambiguity there if someone tries to use it and then come back at us for that, which they should do because I feel like it's a generous policy to begin with. And then the last one here is just, this is a best practice. Our insurance companies recommend it, and where we're adding stuff relating to our sick policies, I feel like it's good to formalize this because we currently do this, that if someone's out for more than 3 consecutive days in a row, that we require them to bring us a doctor's note. Mass general law says we can't go any less than 3, but it's common practice that if someone uses 3 consecutive days in a row, come forth, you need a doctor's note, otherwise it's considered abuse of sick time. So I guess they're just looking for approval to create this a non-union policy come July 1st and the beginning of the next fiscal year.
Couple questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anything in this for the non-union personnel that's better than what we're granting to the union?
No.
Or is it worse?
Identical.
It's identical.
Exactly the same.
Well,
It's exactly the same.
yes. There's... Yeah.
I think that's a hypothetical at this point.
Yes,
because
it
the
is a
contracts aren't finalized.
Correct. That's the caveat there, is that these are still under discussion with the non-unions, the unions,
Right.
everyone else. It's still a work in progress.
Wouldn't
That's
it
what I
be
meant to say. My apologies.
advantageous for us to give them a little bit more for being non-bargaining?
To give them more?
Yeah, a little bit more, yeah. Because they don't have, yeah. To be a little more generous, I shouldn't say give them be more generous, to try to keep them from going bargaining on us, you know?
So what would you suggest?
I don't know,
So-
that's what the negotiator's for.
You're probably speaking more to salary, which we have a lot of
No,
flexibility.
no,
but
not
I'm
salary.
not sure what you could do with this. We work really hard to maintain parity in certain areas. This is probably one of those areas. I love that we're doing this for our non-union personnel.
Well, absolutely, they should have parity,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I guess the main goal with presenting this tonight is, again, it's a work in progress still with all of the collective bargaining units. And the unions are still ongoing, and there's nothing finalized with any of them. I should say that. I just like to get everyone on the same page so that we're not recreating the wheel with different departments come July 1. So I think it's nice to get an even slate for everyone across the board. So, I mean,
So we should wait till the other ones, till the contracts are finalized, before we agree to give it to none.
Because they're gonna look at this and say, well, you've already set the bar.
it's a fair comment. I would say that, yeah.
I mean,
The way I look at this now is that it's been seen by other units in the town, so at least now it gives it a chance for the non-union employees to
Yeah.
fully see what they have in a similar manner proposed to them.
yeah, I agree with Wayne, we should wait, because this would influence, it's probably almost executive session stuff, right?
Oh, I would say yes, definitely.
So, tip our cards here.
Well, no, this isn't, because this is just policy for non-union personnel. So this would never have gone under executive session as it stands, because we're only talking about non-union.
Yeah, but when it gets to the union contract, that would be an executive session. I thought that was a question.
Let's
Okay.
Table it.
So we have a draft. If anybody has comments, maybe bring them up to the next meeting. And I guess you could even add it to the next agenda after the signing of all of the open
Yep.
contracts.
Okay.
Okay. Onward. So I was really happy you were here for the water sewer discussion, and then I thought maybe you were here for this, but now I'm realizing you were here for health insurance, weren't you? Oh my gosh, Becky, I'm so sorry. I'm going out of order under old business and taking poor Becky, who has now sat here since 6, and it's 8:35. Oh my gosh.
Fine.
That's not fine. I'm so sorry.
There's a memo too from me. It's the last page in your packet too that explains what that is.
So I I actually, I saw that on the agenda
Yeah.
this morning. I'm not sure
It was-
exactly what the,
Becky sent out an email to all of our employees, and it's just mainly as a notification to the people in the public. And Becky and I spoke about this earlier today too.
Oh.
That Fallon notified all of our retirees and employees that they
not
were
the
can-
retirees yet.
Oh, not the retirees yet. Okay, just the actives, but just so the retirees hear it before it gets there, that they're terminating all health insurance benefits come June 30th, 2019. Not everyone had heard that we're switching health insurance providers, and that is why they're terminating their benefits, and that was not listed in the notification that was sent out by Fallon. So Becky and I have had some people
Oh dear.
run into our office asking why we're canceling their health insurance on them.
Yeah, we didn't know that Fallon was gonna send out the letter so quickly that we are switching over to Maya, Blue Cross Blue Shield, which we've all discussed and we voted on in, early March or
Yeah.
late February. There's a notice actually that's going on everybody's paychecks, because that's the only way I can communicate with the actual employees, as to April 25th is gonna be the meeting for them to get everything signed up. There's gonna be meetings all day long. May 8th, we have a benefit fair that's happening to kind of go over everything too. I did mention it at the department head meeting and did pass out that notice that I had hoped the department heads would have told their employees, but some of them came in and called in panic mode, asking why their insurance was gonna be canceled June 30th.
So,
Like, it's
yeah.
not canceling, we're
So
switching.
we put this on the agenda just so that for the record, for the TV, YouTube, on Publix, any retirees or employees that are watching, their health insurance is not being canceled by the town. We're switching providers in a seamless manner. Your benefits will carry over come July 1st. We aren't canceling you like it seemed from that notification.
We've had a good experience with Fallon. That was an unfortunate
I
ending.
think Maya did the same thing when we switched from Maya the last time,
Oh,
when we
they-
switched over to Fallon, it's just their thing. So,
Just one comment
But-
for the notification on from the town administrator. I think it should be terminated on June 30th and for pickup on July 1st.
Yes, that
Says
is a
July
typo.
30th.
Yes, that would,
Both places. So I just wanted to confirm that it's,
June 30th, not July 30th. Yes, correct. My apologies.
that's okay.
And I guess a semantics question, I'm assuming this is okay. If somebody had something happen on June 30th,
it's seamless, there's no loss of coverage. It
So
goes
when-
June 30th till
Yeah.
midnight, it starts July 1st at midnight.
Thank you.
Or
Okay,
12:01,
Yeah.
whatever.
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
There's no loss of coverage.
I'm so sorry. 8:30, I'm so sorry. Do you need to leave now? You wanna-
I don't know what else is on the agenda.
All right, I'm going back to old business, community hall contract.
We received this back from legal counsel. As we remember, we talked about this a couple months ago. And it actually worked out, just because the contractor who was awarded the bid went through and penciled out sections of the contract that he didn't agree with, and we sent it over to legal counsel, which legal counsel informed us that my predecessor had sent out 3 versions past of the contract that was currently on file with KP Law. Luckily, most of the provisions were the same. So this is the version of the contract that was approved by David Jenkins and KP Law.
With no pencil marks.
No pencil marks.
Okay. But this, that we're looking at has no signature on it, so now the contractor still has to sign it again?
Well, it was suggested by legal counsel that we get approval to send it to them since we're rejecting the first one. And this is considered a counteroffer.
Oh. Great.
I can tell you the only changes that were suggested by the designer, or the contractor, excuse me, that weren't approved was the crossing out of the 6-year period in multiple different portions of the contract for holding the developer liable for the items that are requested in the contract. That's actually Mass General Law's statute of limitations. So if they don't deliver the community hall study to us in 6 years, they're still liable for that. They requested to cut it down to 1, but we can't go any less than what the statute of limitations is there. So that's really the only change in it. But because it's considered a counteroffer, I have to have approval to counter.
All right.
Because the contract was already issued
Yep.
is the issue.
What do you need?
We need a motion to allow the town administrator to send this amended contract over to the contractor for signature.
So moved.
It saved us $1,000 too, right?
Do I have a second?
Second.
$1,000.
All in favor?
Aye.
Onward, appointments to the building committee.
You have 3 letters of interest before you for members of the public. These are the only 3 we received in response to the building committee all call that we put out via the town's listserv, town's Facebook website. The charge that was approved by the board for the building committee said 2 members at large that we have that have experience in engineering, construction, building, or related fields in that nature. So these are the 3 applicants we had here. And if you have any questions, I can.
How many vacancies?
2. But it's an ad hoc committee, so it's.
Let's put them all on, right? Ad hoc. You have 3 volunteers. They're all. Interesting
have a
that they're all
problem with
written on the same font. How's that happen?
They came to Abby's email before she left, and
It just
Abby's
got-
email defaulted them
Oh,
all to the
okay.
same. Yeah.
Why not?
It's the same author.
Why not stick them all on there?
Stick them all on there, right?
I have no problem extending the committee by 1 more. It's fine with me.
Can I have a motion with the names, please?
Make the motion that that the board appoint to the ad hoc building committee the following volunteers: Miss Sherry Roaf, R-O-A-F, Mr. Dennis Pierce, P-I-E-R-C-E, and Mr. Kevin Jarvie, J-A-R-V-I. Adding to the numbers by 1.
Second.
Comments? All in favor? Well,
They paid all their bills?
But we
not a
need to
policy
verify
yet,
that.
doesn't matter.
I was just wondering.
Gavel that guy.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Great. Next, appointment of the Managed Growth Steering Committee.
There's a memo in your packet from me. It looks like this with the word appointments at the top. After going back with study and review, this was Abby's last thing before she left. We realized that while the board voted to create the Managed Growth Steering Committee and approve its charge, the members were actually never officially appointed and sworn in by the town clerk's office. So this, I want to stress, as I say here, does not invalidate any of the work that they've done, and they are still a committee working for the town. This just formalizes it into a formal committee. That's why if you look now on the town's website, they're under temporary committees at the bottom rather than standing committees, and they don't actually have their own page. Is because we can only do that per the town's current policy for appointed boards by the town. And we found this out within the past couple weeks, so we just want to correct that so it's clear. The members are at the bottom in the last paragraph. And just to note that myself, town planner Dave George, and Director Buckley act as professional advisors to the committee rather than full-on members of it.
And, yeah, is there not a conflict for Ron Barron? You're really just looking to appoint the head of the Select Planning, Concom, and Board of Health reps.
So would Ron be moved to a professional advisor to the committee?
I would say there's no, we triple checked this, and there is no town bylaw or anything in state law that says someone appointed to a town commission or committee needs to be a resident of that town, surprisingly. So he could be appointed to it, or he could.
Did you check with him too? Because he's doing it through a grant. He's kind of
Yeah, that's where it could be.
going to mess him up a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just for Ron.
Just for Ron. I
Other
feel
ones
like
I
the
don't
others
have a
should be
problem.
appointed and would be fine tonight, and then if
Yeah,
worse comes to worse, we can come back and revisit him later.
Okay, can I get a motion to appoint, and please list the names, the 5 residents?
I'll make a motion that the board appoint to the Managed Growth Steering Committee, Mr. Jeffrey Stillings, Mr. Dick Williams, Mr. Scott Gilroy, Mr. Norm Anderson, and Mr. Sean Moore.
Thank
I
you.
don't know that Norm Anderson was on there.
Huh?
I don't know that Norm Anderson was actually on there.
That's correct.
Oh,
So before you guys vote,
Hold on.
discussion,
Well, then that's why you have Ron, because that makes 5.
I think the idea is that there's.
3, 4, 5.
one representative from each board. There's a double up with Sean, but Sean is representing
Concom.
Concom. Mr. Williams
And
is for
then-
the planning.
Right, and Board of Health.
Board of Health is Scott Gilroy,
Yeah.
who has been attending. So, all due respect to Norm Anderson, he's not
Where's your planning board?
I am.
Dick Williams.
Okay, well, and Ron is your chair. No, you're the
Ron
chair.
is, no,
Ron
Ron's
is the chair, so that's why. There we
Yeah,
go.
you would have to be appointed if he's chair.
Because I vaguely recall Ron having this conversation about our non-restriction for town, non-town members. Okay.
Then I'll make an amendment to my motion to withdraw Norm Anderson's name and add Mr. Ron Barron.
Which gives us 5. Is there a second?
Wasn't there-
What?
Discussion, wasn't there a question of his grant?
From the top of my head, I don't see that for.
Could make a contingency that it doesn't, if it
If
messes with his grant or anything like that, then we circle back, right?
Okay.
Do you want to note in the motion that, Mike and George and Dave and Joe are,
I don't think that needs to be. We're already acting in that capacity
Okay.
anyway. It's just part of our jobs.
Okay.
All other things as whatever that wording is in every job description.
All in, excuse me, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain, right?
Yep, thank you. Skip,
What?
you good?
Oh, yeah, I'm good.
Oh, good. 4 with 1 abstention. All right, under under correspondence, we have the letter from the Agricultural Commission, and that had some attachments to it. That was received on March 18th. Did anybody have any questions?
Well, we have the commission here.
We
We
do.
want to be heard. Chairman, give us a gist of the letter.
We're here to answer questions. State why the letter came if it makes you feel better.
Sure.
Good what?
I can state why the letter potentially came.
Yes, I mean,
I mean,
send it.
Randy Jordan, Chairman of the Ag Commission, Muskapog Road. It came to our attention, I mean, you heard our grievances when we were talking about the soccer field / agricultural fields. You had many concerns from other people other than ourselves. Your hands were tied. You don't necessarily agree with what you did, but you did what you had to do. It came to our attention after we spoke to some people around the community, not necessarily just in the Rutland community, but in the agricultural community and different areas that we had spoken to. It came to our knowledge that we really needed to make you aware of that Article 97. And potentially, I think it's not necessarily looking out for ourselves, but we're looking out for the town of Rutland in that situation that we may be in violation. And correct me if I'm wrong, we've learned a little bit more information. That Article 97 has been brought forth in the court systems and actually gone in the favor of the people pressing charges in regards to Article 97. All we're trying to do is make the town aware of, guys, we may have done something wrong here in the process that we've done it. May not have explored that potential option before you voted on the decision. I think you genuinely gotta consider where we're coming from in presenting it to you, because it's our due diligence as a committee to bring it forth to you guys. We all agree that the kids need a place to play soccer. We don't necessarily disagree that it shouldn't be on our agricultural open space fields. We think we're in, the Board of Rutland, the town of Rutland may be in compliance with their decision on that particular area. Correct me if I'm wrong, please, committee members.
Is there anybody else?
I mean, I think we can have an open discussion. So did anybody have any questions about the letter? There's a lot of people
Well-
here for it.
I just want to say this. As far as the agriculture commissions, I think you guys have met your charge very well. I mean, your charge is to represent the interests of agriculture, and you do that. You do that very well. We knew that there was a letter, but I did not physically put my hands on the letter until this evening. I didn't see it till this evening. I would like to read it, study it, absorb it, and then it sounds like there's district council or chief counsel questions in there on compliance to Chapter 97. I would like to be educated about it, hear from our town administrator.
Sure.
And then welcome the Ag Commission back for a circle back, instead of just looking at this, you know, post 3 hours and then trying to wing it. You got a lot of, you have a lot of information here, you have a lot of legal information in there, so. I mean, unfortunately, that's the way it goes when you're in an open forum like this. This doesn't get passed up. We knew that there was a letter coming, but it doesn't get passed willy-nilly around the side. This is the proper way to do it, right? So, unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to really give it the due diligence that your work deserves, so, speaking for myself. So I'd like to take it home, read it, circle back and give the town administrator time to,
Sure.
check with town council on any violation that the allegations, suggest.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to have time to study it too.
Good.
Would you guys be, open to coming back at some time at your convenience? We maybe, if we put you at the beginning, I know it's past your bedtime, Randy.
Oh,
but
God.
We
Yeah, maybe we
put you
can,
earlier in the night.
well, we pretty much didn't do right by anybody who was here tonight. Because we started late even for Joe, although it was
No.
only 10 minutes, that doesn't really count, but Becky, these guys, oh my gosh. I guess I was trying to piece together the timeline, and I'm trying to remember. So the AgCom got formed a little bit after the school was finished, right? Are you on your 8-year anniversary? Does that sound about right? 8?
I would say so.
2006?
I'm sorry, when?
The Agricultural Commission was formed.
2006.
06. It was sort of in response to this. Was it, or was it unrelated? The timing is similar.
It was
The time-
timing, it
right.
was unrelated.
Oh, okay. This was before my time, and I'm trying to remember why the town didn't do an APR at the time. Now, obviously, I vaguely remember that the school building committee at the time made the choice to move the school back in response to the letter. But the letter had also requested that an APR be put on more of that parcel. And it's been a long time now, and I'm just thinking back and wondering if does anybody remember anything?
There's a lot of variables that potentially could happen in an APR situation. The town may have wanted to do it, the building committee may have wanted to do it, but APR, you just don't snap your fingers and make it happen. It's a long process, and it's timing of money. When the Jordans did an APR a number of years ago, we had to get White Oaks involved in it because the landowner wanted to sell it, and so there's a lot of moving transaction. I don't remember back to when the process, I remember it moving back.
Right.
I remember there was discussion, but the actual reason of why it didn't happen is beyond my memory bank.
Okay, and the state never reached out to the AgCom to push that process forward?
No,
Yeah.
it's all, probably depends on funding.
Yeah.
And there's federal funding sometimes attached with APR in the state of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's challenging to do those multi-deals, and sometimes it's 4 or 5 years, Sheila, to do an APR, so timing wasn't right, you had to get funding or whatever, I can't answer that.
Is the
The Ag Commission wouldn't have dealt with the ticks the way you guys did, so it would have been different.
Actually, somebody from the school district suggested we burn the field, which I feel like might be the way you would have dealt with the ticks.
No. It's not what they're gonna go into the dirt and they're gonna come back out again.
Okay. Sorry, that was a side note. Yep, name and address.
Glenn Coppola, 126 Main Street. One thing I'd like you to look at in this letter is it mentions the policy on denying state grant funding. I know there's been a lot of talk about preservation of land for open space, agriculture, conservation, recreation. I want to make sure that we look at this Article 97 that it doesn't jeopardize future grants in the future. Because it's clear the way the budget's been going that we're probably not gonna have a lot of town funds to purchase property, at least not currently. So, that might be one thing that we definitely wanna, check out the ramifications of this Article 97.
Thank you, sir. Randy, can you point us towards the chapter and verse here of the 97? The wording specifically that's of,
My representative, Mr. Copeland, would be more than happy to read it to you if you'd like.
can you show us the smoking gun here? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, where does it start?
It's
Get my
amendment
highlighter
to
here.
the state constitution. It was adopted in 1972.
What paragraph?
It's an amendment to the state constitution. The general law, I can't cite the law number, but it's listed in the amendments to the Massachusetts state constitution.
But in the letters that you sent,
Yes.
this is the packet, right? Is there anything in this section, I'm looking at the EOA Article 97, the land disposition policy of 98. Is there anything in here that specifically verbalizes that, hey, this applies specifically to the situation before us tonight?
Well, I believe it would be under the Articles of the General Report of, I don't know if it's 1972, but there's an awful lot of amendments to the state constitution. So you have, but basically if you search Mass General Law, and I think you get Article 97, it comes right up.
Yeah,
It was
just to
adopted in 1972.
clarify, I think where the confusion is the gentleman saying if you want to look up the chapter and verse by itself, it's not actually Mass General Law Chapter X, Section Y. It's the Mass Constitution Amendment, and articles are the amendment numbers there. I think what Jeff is asking is where in here is the paragraph that basically says this is why this is being looked at right here. Is it like, is there a specific item in the letter here that says?
It's not with the letter. I can, it may have been amended since, but this
Yeah,
is article, I can leave it with the.
Well, I don't think he's looking for the verse of.
There's an argument in page 1 of your letter that says, hey, this is in violation of 97. Can I have the 97, the
Oh,
wording?
yeah.
And I'd
Okay,
like to
so
see the
that is
paragraph
it.
that says
Yeah.
X,
Yeah,
Y,
that
and
would be
Z,
it.
and
That would
so,
be that.
so we can have an aha moment that you suggest is there.
I can send you the link, Jeff. Here's the link, right here.
Thanks. Yeah, this is it. This is it. So Jeff, you can.
That's why I asked you to stand up, 'cause I knew you had it. I'm sorry, I should have told you that.
Here, here's the Constitution, here's the Articles of Amendment. Okay. I sent it to you, so you'll have it for
Okay.
later, and then I think they passed it down.
I mean, so I guess my question is, are we seeing what they're saying?
Well, what got attached was the description by the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs as to the policy that came out of Article 97. So you can see, if you look at, so they gave us their cover letter, and then the map, and then the policy that went along with Article 97. That's what you gave us, right? So Article 97 itself, we can find online just before the amendments rejected. Well, a little bit before that. It goes up to 100 and something. And I think if you look on page, I got it here.
Pass it on, Jeff.
Oh,
Do
yeah.
you already have it on
Sorry.
screen?
Yeah, I don't know. And then if you look on page 3 of 3 out of that policy, and you look under section 4, it's the applicability of the policy to municipalities. I think that's what KP is looking at, correct? Yeah. So I think the question is going to be, in a lease that involves nonprofit monies, and so no tax dollars are being used, and we are not, is it considered to be a disposal of the land? So we're not selling this piece of property. That's probably the question.
Is it a fair question?
Anything's a fair question, sure.
So then we defer to town council.
Council.
Yep.
Right, and then we give them a fair answer.
Is that fair when we look at the municipalities? And if it were applicable, and in order to comply, we would have to do all of the 6 steps. Conservation Commission, we don't have a Parks Commission, so number 2 would be not applicable. 2/3 vote in town meeting, 2/3 vote of the legislature in support of disposition.
Legislature.
Because it's
Right.
article land.
Right. Yeah. Talk about the funding sources, and then complying with Article 97, the disposition policy, which is probably secondary to this. So I think that's the hinge. Do we have any idea when we're gonna hear?
Not yet.
Okay.
Hopefully soon.
Yeah.
And then when you get the answer, we'll invite them back.
Absolutely.
Anything I'm missing?
Did Miss Hobson, who has been involved in this kind of since the beginning, since she signed both letters, did she have anything else to say? Her letter from July was relatively short. That was addressed to you, Deb. And then she was also the signatory on the letter from 2006. I didn't know if anybody had been in touch. No? Okay.
But we had talked to her during the process,
Okay.
and we had asked for a letter
And
of
she-
that, and that's the
right.
best to her ability that she could help us with.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and she sort of remembers it the way we remember it without any of that intervening sort of, well, what happened since? Yeah. Okay.
Is there other land in town that has fallen under this article? That,
It would have to be municipal owned, and I think this is the only piece of municipally owned agricultural land.
Well, probably the Heights if we got right down to it.
But that's not, well,
Not prime agriculture.
it hasn't been classified. I guess if you check the soil, it could be
Yeah, we probably have to.
agricultural.
I think we asked about that early on, about the maps.
I guess we can't answer it at this point because
Right.
that's not really a concern of ours at the moment.
Right.
Trying to put fires out.
right, no, I was just curious.
Yeah, we'd heard back from somebody at USDA who said that they applied a dual intensity approach when they were designing the map units. And there was discussion about, clearly Rutland back in the day was almost entirely, the woodlots were cut, right? It was pretty much all farmland, and he essentially said, abandoned farms where surface stones were removed, and to identify that, it would be a different set of data where you'd have to connect it to GIS and overlay it. It's sort of interesting. And do site-specific investigation. Yeah.
Soils maps do change over time. I mean, as
Right.
you clear and farm,
Yeah.
that's happened to us in the past.
Yep, and they clarified that, so there's 2 different types, right? 355B and 355C, prime farmland. One is that, one is farmland of statewide importance, with slope being the difference between the two. Yeah. Do you all know of any other questions that we should be asking legal? To the point of the town should be doing the right thing. So is there anything other than that as far as,
I think it's pretty well stated in our letter. I don't believe we have any other
okay, so
evidence at the moment to do that.
the reading of Article 97 is really the crux of it.
I believe that,
Okay.
the general gist of it, yes.
Okay.
Now, just a clarification, as a Ag Commission, could we have gone to town council and asked questions before going through you? Or being a commission, we can't go to town council for a situation like this? Because potentially, we would have liked to have gone to town council and say, hey, guys, this is what we think. Are we right, wrong? Can we present or waste the selectmen's time in this situation? And we felt that potentially we couldn't go to the, we as an ag commission couldn't go to town council without your permission, without, why we went this direction is because more or less we want town council's opinion.
Right, yeah. No, you're right. You would have had to have asked permission, and most likely, you know, Mike's first contact with KP would have been also to attach your letter, but I think you're attaching everything anyway, right?
Yeah. The we are actually I actually just asked that question last week because it came up with the bylaw committee too, as to how it works. What we got from legal is just talk to me, and then I'll be the go-between between legal and the commission, and we can work that way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What does the planning board do when they have a legal question? They come to this board, or they would go up?
No, I believe, I don't know if they go through
They're the
town
town
administrator,
administrator.
because Norm Anderson has in the past gone through Margaret for various things, so.
Because
It's reasonable.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's gone to Mike lately at all, but.
Yeah, no, the planning board hasn't had to come to me or anything. Reason being is that the administrator's office controls the legal department budget. So where it's spending town funds on legal counsel, that's why it just has to make sure that if something can be answered in-house before going to KP, that gets settled.
But it can go through you without necessarily waiting for a BOS meeting.
Correct.
So
Yep.
We could have asked Mike, hey, the ag commission has a question,
Yep, and I could have gone straight to KP.
and potentially if we don't want to show our cards to you. Well, no, I mean, in all due respect, sometimes we want to gather information before we present our case to you. And if we go through Mike, then we're not necessarily showing you what we're, I won't say up to, but
I think you should feel free to always go to Mike if you have concerns.
now, in all due respect, before the selectmen had made this decision back, when they chose to go to the soccer field route, should they have gone to KP Law and asked questions, and KP should have known this Article 97 without us bringing it forward to you?
Well, we actually did go through, we thought everything. We wanted to make sure, I mean, we had, I think, every town department working on it, the assessor's office. Becky checked into everything relative to the MSBA loans. So there were a lot of town agencies working on it, and KP was, I think, notified at the time, and I don't, they can go back through their own notes, but,
I wasn't here, obviously.
Yeah, Bob was
so
here.
I can't speak because that was Bob's doing, but from what I've been told, KP checks warrant articles before
yeah.
we fully publish them.
Yep.
That's the best I can say just because I don't know what else.
So if KP's law is wrong, can we back bill them for our time and our cost of doing this letter? Well, you're laughing.
What's
I'm
your
not.
time worth? Yeah.
I spread a lot of shit in the course of a day, so it's worth a lot.
I'm sure it's
I don't think so. No, I'd highly doubt it. I'd highly doubt it.
That was a funny question.
So moving forward, we're waiting for an answer. Do you want Mike to reach out to you when we know it's coming up on the next agenda? I mean, keep an eye out, right? You know when we post on Thursdays?
Notify us, it'd be nice.
Thursday
Just
before
an
the
email.
meeting?
Oh, yeah.
The only reason we knew about tonight, we happened to notice the agenda, so.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
we'll
fix
try
that.
to,
Someone notified us it was gonna be gone.
Okay.
Correspondence.
that your, I mean, obviously your letter being addressed to the selectmen had to come under correspondence, right? As soon as we got it, it needed to be on the next meeting.
I mean,
We were hoping it was gonna, but we didn't expect it to.
No, it had to be.
Every letter to the selectmen has to come into correspondence?
Yeah, pretty much.
So if I sent you a thank you note, it would come under next week?
Send it.
I just assumed you could deal with it in-house and you wouldn't need to.
If it's
you felt
addressed,
it wasn't met worthy.
if there's a policy issue that's addressed to the selectmen, then it has to go on the agenda. If it's a general inquiry that's sent to the town administrator, that can be dealt with in-house. Or if it's, I feel like they got a general inquiry addressed to the selectmen that could be dealt with in the town administrator's office, but where this was a policy question, it had to go on the agenda.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and we'll try to make it earlier.
Yeah.
Earlier would be helpful. All right. All right. Thank you. We are gonna move on. Is there anything else to come before the board? If not, I'll take a motion to go into executive session for reason number 2.
We go into executive session for reason number 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, dispatch, only to return to regular session for adjournment.
Second.
Clock eye.
Right.
Waitman, aye.
Stillings, aye.
Goodbye.
So be it.
Should be a real quick one.
Well, but it's only 9:10.
Only?
Do we have 2 minutes? We still have to